Part 75. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 771. Your Master. Su Tong looked at the inn and immediately asked, "Who is your master?" The boy smiled and said, "My master is named after a poem. He was born during the transition of Xia and Shang dynasties. He is the Xiaoao Immortal of the East, the ruler of the nine heavens Zhoubo, and the demon king of the three realms." Su Tong blinked. "I don't understand." The boy was stunned and had no choice but to reveal his master's name. "My master is the great demon king Kingdi." Oh! Su Tong suddenly realized it and secretly cried out in his heart, "Good guy, I'm really afraid of whatever I want." Just after seeing off a white emperor's guard, the big boss here came in person. This must have come too soon. The great demon king Kingdi came in person, and Su Tong was in distress for a moment. This was not a guard. He could fight on his own. Anyway, there were people to help him. Just when I was worried about how to deal with it, I heard Lilith's voice coming from behind, "Then let's meet together." Looking back, he realized that Lilith had stepped out of the carriage and came behind him. "Then you go and come back quickly, I'll wait for you outside." When Su Tong saw this, he was about to run away, but Lilith grabbed him by the collar. How could she let Su Tong escape easily? She immediately said in a deep voice, "You come with me." "No, you bosses are talking about business, what do you want me to do?" Su Tong asked knowingly. "What to do? Use it as a shield. It seems that women like this. Even though someone is asking you to date, you insist on dragging a best friend with you, and then use your best friend as a shield to stand in the middle." The boy also spoke at this moment. "My master specifically told me that the envoy must come together." Su Tong grimaced and glanced back at the fat monk. As a result, he found that the fat monk waved to him with a smile. Seeing this, Su Tong's eyes lit up. "Okay, please wait for me." Then he walked quickly to the fat monk. Pulling the fat monk's arm, let's go together." As a result, the fat monk hurriedly waved his hand. "Goodbye." The poor monk has a shallow cultivation and dare not disobey the great demon king Kingdi. "Then why are you waving? Your hands are itchy." Su Tong's face darkened when he heard this, as if you don't come with me, I will hug you and not let go. "Ha ha ha ha, sir, don't worry, the poor monk will teach you a method that will protect you." The fat monk smiled and moistened his saliva, and wrote and drew randomly on Su Tong's back. For a moment, Su Tong didn't know what the fat monk had written. "Just listen to the fat monk's message, Your Majesty, just go. Although the Qing Emperor is terrifying, as long as you don't get angry, he can't do anything to you." Really, Su Tong was a little suspicious. "I swear." Seeing the fat monk raising his hand in assurance, Su Tong was relieved, walked to Lilith, raised his arm, and said in a playful tone, "Let's have a relationship with you." Lilith covered her mouth, reached out to hold Su Tong's arm, and walked into the inn with the boy leading the way. Like the Shaluting Inn, it doesn't look big from the outside, but the space inside is surprisingly large. In the neat rows of small courtyards, you can see steaming heat rising upwards from time to time. The boy led the two of them until they reached the deepest part, in front of the door of a separate luxurious compound. Su Tong took a closer look and saw several soldiers wearing black armor guarding the door. These people exuded a strong murderous aura from a distance. The murderous aura was so frightening that it was as terrifying as if these people had crawled out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Before Su Tong could get closer, his scales stretched out unconsciously. This is the elite. Compared with the previous White Emperor guards, there is a huge difference. These people are the real underworld warriors. As if she was aware of the dragon scales on Su Tong's body inspired by the murderous aura, Lilith gently placed her hand on Su Tong's palm, patted it twice, and gave Su Tong a relieved look. "You two, please come inside." the boy stood in front of the door to pay respects. Su Tong took a deep breath and entered the courtyard with Lilith. As soon as you enter the door, you will see a huge hot spring. The pool is gleaming with golden light, and the steaming heat sweeps away the chill from your body. There are also a few unnamed flowers inside, and I don't know what species they are that can grow in such a hot spring. Walking along the path next to the hot spring to the main hall, I saw a vague shadow lying on the beauty's couch through the screen. Standing next to them were two girls with beautiful figures, holding wine and feeding them. After the two people walked in with the boy whispered, "Qing Emperor, people have arrived. In this humble position, I accept the envoy to see the great demon King Kingdi. I wish the great demon King Kingdi good fortune and prosperity forever." Su Tong stepped forward and respectfully paid homage to the figure behind the screen. Although he likes to play, it doesn't mean that he likes to look for trouble. In front of him, the Qing Emperor's status is even equal to that of a ghost emperor like Du Ziren. It is obviously not a wise approach to show off his cleverness in front of such a person. "I've seen the great demon King Kingdi." Lilith followed Su Tong and bowed slightly. The figure behind the screen swayed slightly, and then a lazy voice was heard, "You two, please sit down." There were two seats, one on the left and one on the right. They should have been separated, but Su Tong sat directly next to Lilith. He didn't say anything to the figure behind the screen, but looked at Su Tong through the screen. It was just a normal look, without deliberately peeking at Su Tong. Even so, the scrutinizing gaze still made Su Tong a little uncomfortable. "I heard that you tore up by Emperor's decree and beat up by Emperor's people. Now it seems that you are indeed a heroic young man. But if you do this, Bai Emperor will definitely not give up. You may be fine in the world, but, everyone, it will be time to die." Kingdi's voice is very kind and gives people a unique sense of intimacy, making it easy for people to let go of their guard. It's just that Su Tong didn't dare to have this idea, and besides, he wouldn't act stupidly with such a big hat. His expression was straight and he said, "Qing Emperor Mingjian, Bai Emperor's decree is like a sacred object. How can I tear it up? Someone must be instigating it. Such tricks cannot be hidden from Bai Emperor's discernment. As for me beating Bai Emperor's attendant, it's even more nonsense. Oh. So I have wronged you." Kingdi's voice behind the screen was slightly mocking. Su Tong immediately explained, "I have been ordered by Yin Caosi, and Yang Yin Si has repeatedly explained the important task of guiding the envoys. I dare not be careless in this humble position. The other party neither has the command of Yin Caosi nor is he a direct superior. Not only did he block the envoys, and even beat us up, I'm just punishing Cao 6 Yao on behalf of Yin." Su Tong couldn't do without Yin Caosi. As for whether Yin Caosi could withstand it, he didn't care at all. The Qing Emperor behind the screen couldn't help laughing when he heard this. Then he looked at Lilith aside and said, "Does the Western envoy come this time to broker the agreement? If so, I'm afraid it will be a wasted trip. As far as I know, the prince has never thought about negotiating with the Western envoy. It means hell joining forces." Su Tong sat aside and listened with open ears. But Lilith had no intention of answering, and instead said with a smile, "I can't understand what Qing Emperor said. This time, my father came here hoping to give you a gift to show his sincerity. As for the agreement back then, I haven't heard anything about it." "Oh." Kingdi nodded thoughtfully, "If that's the case, I'm overthinking it." After saying that, he stared at Su Tong. "The man you beat just now is a famous devil in the world, and his father is the master of Mingchen Newu City Tiangong Palace. The other four are also children from Lufeng Liushan Palace in Bian. Even if they are not direct children, they are definitely not something you can mess with." Su Tong's heart sank slightly, knowing that the Qing Emperor was afraid that Lilith would not cooperate with him, so he simply started to use the knife on himself. He immediately asked, "Dare I ask Emperor Qing, since they are the children of Lefeng Liutian Palace in Bian, can they have priesthood? This question was pure nonsense. King Di frowned and did not respond. Regardless of whether they are priests or not, they are treasonous if they clash with the envoys. Besides, delinquency is self-defense. If they are convicted of this, please ask the Yin Cao division to issue an official ultimatum and send me to the Hall of Hell to report. I think justice will prevail in the hearts of the people. It's ridiculous. Luo Feng wants to kill you in 6 days. Why should he notify Yin Caosi? Crushing you to death is just a grasshopper. The woman holding a drink on the side finally couldn't bear Su Tong's arrogance and said sarcastically. You can't blame the woman for being talkative, but these words sound really funny. Luo Feng of Bian controls all the demons in the 6 heavens. He doesn't even pay attention to the king of hell of the 10 palaces, so how can he care about a Yin Caosi? When Su Tong heard this, he just raised his eyelids and stared at the woman behind the screen calmly. What this girl means is that Luo Feng is good at killing and attracting envoys in 6 days. The woman was so excited by Su Tong that she even sneered. What kind of guide? You are just a common man with a mortal body. If I kill you, I will kill you. I will beat you until your soul is gone. Who dares to say a word for you? Even through the screen, Su Tong could feel the disdain in the woman's words, as if the person who wanted to kill him was the woman herself. Being looked down upon by a maid like this would make anyone angry, but Su Tong remembered the fat monk's words and kept a calm mind. Hearing this, he even smiled and said, what you said has really benefited me a lot, but I like to be more truthful. When my family Yang Yusi came, he told me that the underworld is vast, but there are limits to the law, and no one can be good at it. Exerting power, this is my life creed. If that day comes, I believe that my upright adults will seek justice for me. You. The woman stared, but she didn't expect that the guy in front of her was just a stone. At this time, the Qing emperor finally spoke and said with a full smile, it is indeed extraordinary for the Yin Caosi to have a person like little brother. Anyway, I give this thing to you. If one day the mountains and rivers are exhausted, and this thing is revealed, maybe it can protect you one life. After saying that, he ordered the woman next to him to give him a waist badge. The woman took it respectfully, walked out of the screen, and handed the waist badge to Su Tong. I saw the words Qing Di Great Demon King clearly written on the waist tag. After Su Tong accepted his belt, he thanked Qing Emperor, stood up and left with Lilith. Only after the two of them left did the maid who had mocked Su Tong kneel before the Qing Emperor. It's Xiadi who is incompetent. Forget it, if you take precautions, it won't go as you wish. King Di waved his hand to signal the maid to stand up. Just now he had secretly tried to anger the boy, intending to make him angry so as to plant a demonic seed in his heart. As a result, there seemed to be some power secretly guarding the other party, making it impossible for him to succeed. It seems that if this kid dares to be so tough, there must be someone behind him to back him up. He immediately took out an edict and handed it to the woman, send it to the Yin Cao division. I also want to see if this upright Yang Yu division really dares to disobey my order. According to the order. The maid took the badge and left. On the other side, Su Tong and Lilith only waited for Su Tong and Lilith to walk out of the compound. Only when they were far away did Su Tong heave a sigh of relief. Next time something like this happens, please don't drag me around. Okay, if I can't win you over, I'll kill you. Su Tong complained to Lilith. If he had been really angered by the maid at that time, Emperor Qing might have planted a demonic seed in his mind, and then he would not be able to control his life or death. He simply kept the fat monk's words in mind, so that no matter how agitated the maid was, he would be able to calm down. But it's better that this kind of thing happens less often, so next time, I will definitely not do it again, unless I pay more. Aren't you curious about what the agreement just mentioned is? Lilith asked in a low voice. Su Tong hurriedly signaled her to stop. Curiosity can kill a cat. What kind of class did he belong to? If he got involved in this matter, there would be absolutely no good consequences. Besides, there are some things that you will naturally know when you gain strength, so why should you be in a hurry? While the two were talking, they walked into another small courtyard. Gao Zhou and others have already moved in, and the courtyard is naturally incomparable to King Di's exclusive residence. But there is no problem for 3 or 4 people to bathe in such a large hot spring. Came back. The fat monk waved to Su Tong with a silly smile on his face. How about it? No problem. It's okay. I was given a brand, but I don't know if it will work. Su Tong took out the waist tag given to him by Qing Emperor. The fat monk took it and weighed it in his hand for a few times. He seemed to be sure that there was nothing wrong before returning the tag to Su Tong. Don't give it to you for free. This is the finest green smoke wood. If you don't like it, throw it into the fire and burn it to ashes. It will be the best healing medicine in the world. Hearing what the fat monk said, Su Tong felt much better. Hurry up and cook, baby, I'm almost starving. After the fat monk finished speaking, he began to urge Lilith to cook, as if he really regarded the Hell Princess as the royal cook. Lilith was very happy about this. Cooking was her greatest pleasure. What's more, the old Taoist also brought out the treasured pork, which was top-notch ingredients. How could she refuse? Dang even put on a neat kitchen robe, walked into the kitchen and started cooking. After a while, a top-notch banquet was prepared by Lilith. The meat of Fudo itself is particularly fragrant, and after being processed by Lilith, it becomes even more delicious and addictive. Paired with a pot of sweet and delicious wine, the fat monk's mouth was full of oil after eating, and he called it good, good, good. The meat was delicious, but only Su Tong in the team could devour it. As for Gu Zibai and the others, after eating a few bites, they felt extremely hot all over. Upon seeing this, the fat monk rushed them directly to the hot spring, saying that he wanted to use the hot air of the hot spring to activate the essence of the evil meat. Gao Zhou and others were still doubtful at first, but after soaking in the hot spring for a while, they felt as if their skin and flesh were being burned. Then the 3 of them began to hiccup continuously and spit out the turbid air in their chests. In just a few minutes, the changes in the 3 people were different. Gao Zhou's face surged with anger, and he had actually made a great breakthrough. He had reached the 4th level of reverse training of life and death. Most of the corpse energy in his body had dissipated, and his whole person became no different from a living person. Gu Zibai's forehead was beaded with sweat, and his body was even more solid. A faint milky halo appeared on his smooth skin, which was a precursor to entering the Tao through martial arts. As for Chang Wogu, it is more difficult to figure out. This guy has no training system. Like normal players, he relies entirely on the blessing of prop cards. But at this moment, black smoke was rising from this guy's body, and his body began to swell. After waiting for a while, Chang Wuhan opened his eyes, opened his mouth and spit out a ball of black blood. The black blood spit out on the ground, and in an instant, a hole was corroded into the ground. This guy is really interesting. He also has some blood from hell. I didn't know he was the baby secretly given birth to by that bitch. Seeing this, Lilith couldn't help but snicker secretly. Let's go, let these stinky men hang out here, and let's go back and rest. Lilith stood up and took the eldest princess out, preparing to go back to her room to rest and take a hot bath. Well, is it really good for these 2 girls to go together? Su Tong looked at the backs of the 2 women leaving, and he didn't know why he always had a bad feeling in his heart. After all, it's not Chang Wuja who wants to burp the most, but these 2 tiger girls. But everyone was gone, so I had no choice but to eat and drink enough and follow the fat monk into the hot spring. Gudong. The scalding hot water flooded his skin, causing Su Tong to squint his eyes. He felt that the pores all over his body were open, and he was almost flying with joy. The fat monk sat shirtless next to Su Tong. Although the fat monk looked meaty, his skin was like a peeled egg. As he sat next to Su Tong, a unique fragrance emitted from his body, which made Su Tong want to pounce on the little fat man and bite him hard. While taking advantage of the bath, Su Tong's soul came out of his body and returned to the entrance of the hall. Right now, as King D said, his situation is not good, especially those little devils who may come to trouble him again at any time. If I want to make a breakthrough now, I need to achieve enlightenment. However, enlightenment cannot be achieved through practice, but requires an opportunity. Thinking of this, Su Tong not only took out an object from the props book, it was the crystal heart obtained at the Jade Su platform in heaven. According to the precious mirror under the Yugzu stage, the opportunity for him to become enlightened lies on this thing, but this thing is just a stone, how can he make it beat? So if you want to become enlightened, I'm afraid you still have to look at opportunities. Before that, you can only use other ways to improve your strength. For example, Su Tong looked at the fairy furnace at the entrance of the hall. With a thought, he took out all the medicinal materials obtained during this period. Many of the medicinal materials are treasures provided by the Mei family, and many are left over from the last elixir refining. The most precious one is probably the golden dragon blood. After he displayed these things in front of him, he felt his forehead begin to jump, and the elixir's consciousness began to be stimulated to wake up from his deep sleep. Looking at the materials in front of him, Dan Jing sketched one recipe after another in Su Tong's mind. Until I saw the blood of the golden dragon, there was only one elixir recipe left in my mind called Golden Dao Casting Pill. At this moment, inside the Yin Cao division, only the sound of wailing was heard. It was sad and sad. The little ghosts hiding in the corner looked in the direction of the Yin Cao lobby, and let out a burst of light laughter from time to time. Not to mention these brats, even the other Yin officers of the Yin Cao division had a somewhat light and joyful expression on their faces. It feels like this sad scream is more like the sound of New Year's firecrackers, which makes people feel comfortable. Ouch, the beating was really brutal. Isn't it? It's a deadly move. I've been here for so long and I've never seen anything so happy. Some Yin officials whispered about the scene that had just happened. The group of Beatty's guards could not defeat Su Tong, so they could only vent their frustration on the poor Yang Yinsi. Wait, I'm going to sue you. Yang Yinsi was lying on the bed at the moment. His nose and face were bruised and swollen from being beaten. He had never suffered such humiliation since he became the head of the Yinko division. Wailing means clamoring to sue the King of Hell. If the King of Hell doesn't care, his family will continue to sue. He has never been beaten so severely in his life, and he must give himself an explanation no matter what. Yang Yin Si was still wailing, and a kid from outside the door came in, lay down in Yang Yin Si's ear, and whispered, Yin Si, I have inquired clearly, this matter, seems to be, is. What is it? Tell me quickly. After being beaten inexplicably, Yang Yu sent someone to find out whether he had offended Bai Di or someone else. In the end, it was okay not to ask about it. When the kid below found out clearly, he was also shocked. Faced with Yang Yu's urging, he could only bite the bullet and tell everything he had heard. Well, when he learned that the initiator turned out to be Su Tong, Yang Yu almost jumped out of bed. Damn this little bastard, my mother-in-law has a grudge against him. Yang Yu's lungs were about to burst with rage. The matter of the Y book last time was not over yet. I thought about it for the sake of Luofu Mountain and turned a blind eye. As a result, this kid gave himself a big gift with a backhand, which made him unable to get out of bed. The more Yang Yu thought about it, the angrier he became. He wished he could call Su Tong back now and send this boy to the 18 hells. Just as Yang Yu was cursing Su Tong in his heart, outside the door, a kid was seen hurriedly running in. As soon as he entered the door, he knelt on the ground with a plop. My lord, get up quickly, the Qing Emperor's decree has arrived. Qing Emperor's decree? Yang Yu couldn't help but frown when he heard this, wondering why Qing Emperor came just after someone from Bai De left. However, he did not dare to be careless and hurriedly limped to the front hall with the help of his men. He saw a woman standing in the lobby waiting for him. After seeing Yang Yinsi, who was already bruised and swollen, the woman couldn't help but look suspicious. However, when he saw Yang Yu kneeling down to receive the Qing Emperor's decree, although he was confused, he didn't feel like asking any more questions, so he sent the Qing Emperor's decree to Yang Yinsi's hands. Yang Yu picked it up and opened it. He saw that the facial features on the bruised and swollen face were suddenly twisted in pain. He rolled his eyes and passed out. Several Yin officials on the side quickly picked up the Qing Emperor's decree and saw a line of words clearly written on it: if the Emperor is not strict, he will be slapped with 3,000 mouths. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 772. Yang Yu will not comment for the time being, but in short, this unfortunate guy's nightmare may have just begun. Two flowers bloom, and we each show one. Su Tong also encountered trouble here. In the fairy furnace in front of me, a golden crystal gradually turned red in the fire. But time passed by, but it didn't melt. You must know that all the other auxiliary medicines have been dissolved, but the main medicine has not moved. Even the elixir is starting to become a little anxious. Would you like to increase the fire power? Su Tong frowned and asked Dan Zheng. No, the risk is too great, absolutely don't do it. Dan Jing quickly stopped him, fearing that Su Tong would mess up. Then take it out first, otherwise if you boil it like this, the auxiliary medicine will be almost completely burned out. Seeing that he was unsuccessful, Su Tong planned to take out the dragon's blood first and try another method. The result was still rejected by the elixir. At this moment, the layer of crystals outside the dragon's blood was already burning red, and the dragon's blood inside was probably about to boil. If you take it out at this time and encounter air, the medicinal properties will evaporate immediately. Seeing that neither this nor that would work, Su Tong suddenly became a little annoyed, looking ahead and looking behind. No wonder you failed in refining the alchemy. After saying that, Su Tong put his hands on the alchemy furnace. What are you going to do? Don't do whatever you want. Upon seeing this, Dan Jing hurriedly shouted to stop Su Tong, but Su Tong could no longer listen. I am not as good as you in making elixirs, but you are not as good as me in doing things. What Su Tong hates the most is such an indecisive temperament. He hesitates before and after, and loses in a daze in the end. I saw him placing his hands on the alchemy furnace and using all his strength to use the Supreme Alchemy Sutra. Suddenly, the firepower of the immortal furnace in front of him increased sharply, and the dragon's blood finally began to show signs of dissolving. It works. Seeing that it was effective, Su Tong was refreshed and didn't care so much anymore, and kept up the fierce attack. As the firepower increased, various medicinal materials finally began to fuse. The originally golden blood gradually turned into a deep purple due to the fusion of various medicines. Purple light was flying on the immortal furnace. Not to mention these fat monks, even the old Taoist noticed the purple light at the entrance of Su Tong Tang. Amitabha, good, good, good. The fat monk clasped his hands together, Buddha's light appeared in his eyes, as if he could see through the entrance of the hall, and when he saw Su Tong's fairy furnace, he was shocked in his heart. I didn't expect that this immortal furnace would be here. The venerable man is indeed a very blessed person in my Buddhist section. The old Taoist on the side couldn't help curling his lips when he heard this, and thought to himself, damn fat man, now I will become your Buddhist sect. However, after he thought about it, he made up his mind and said with a smile, Master is right, my young master has a predestined relationship with Buddhism. Since he has a predestined relationship with Buddha, Why don't you take advantage of the beauty of adulthood? No matter what, it is also a flower that falls into your own family Tien. The reason why the old Taoist said this was not because he could clearly see the way Su Tong made alchemy in the hall, but because he smelled the fragrance in the alchemy furnace. The elixir was not yet ready, but the fragrance of the elixir overflowed from the alchemy furnace. This meant that the heat must be very high. This is not a good sign. If the fire is not controlled later, I am afraid that all the efforts made in this pot of elixir will be wasted. So since the fat man has said that Su Tong is from their Buddhist sect, they can't let it go at this time. The fat monk was startled when he heard this. Although he knew that the old Taoist said this deliberately, the truth was not bad. After thinking for a moment, he patted his thigh and said, "Well, whoever let this poor monk eat and drink here for so long, it's time to do something." After the fat monk finished speaking, he reached out and touched his body, and suddenly looked embarrassed. Why, it was only then that he remembered that he was not wearing any clothes. For a moment, I could only smile bitterly. It is really destined that this poor monk has to pay the price for his gluttony. That's it, that's it. As he spoke, he stretched out his fingers, pinched his thumbnail on his index finger, and suddenly a drop of golden blood appeared on his fingertip. Hiss. Looking at this golden drop of blood, the old man's eyes were straightened. He saw the blood droplets were crystal clear, sparkling, fragrant and intoxicating. If you look closely, there seemed to be a little man sitting cross-legged on a Qingyuan golden lotus. On top of it, he recited sutras, as if he had transformed into a Buddha. Just this drop of blood is probably better than thousands of magical medicines in the world. The Tang monk in Journey to the West is not so good. Yes, no wonder the monsters in the book like to eat monks. It makes sense. The old Taoist stared at the little fat man's chubby body and couldn't help swallowing. If I hadn't known that I couldn't beat this fat man, I would have turned into a princess at this moment and pounced on him to suck him dry. I saw the fat monk holding the flower with his hand, flicking it with his fingers, and the golden blood flew into Su Tong's hall like a shooting star. What? Dia and the others saw the golden light coming, not knowing what it was, and wanted to intercept it. However, before they could take action, the golden light shone brightly and was thrown directly into the fairy furnace. Namo Amitabha. The golden light escaped into the alchemy furnace, and the Buddha's light suddenly rose, and there was only the faint sound of chanting sutras. Su Tong was shocked and didn't know what was going on. However, countless scriptures appeared in the alchemy furnace. Under the blessing of these scriptures, the fairy furnace suddenly shone brightly, and each scripture seemed to contain the mystery of creation. One glance at it gives you the feeling of peeking into the avenue. Blessed by the heavens. Seeing that the elixir was about to take shape, Su Tong did not hesitate at all, activating the effect of heaven's blessing and increasing the effect of the elixir. It was a pity that more than 2,000 script points were evaporated, but it failed to trigger the hand of the sky. Suddenly there was a bright light, and the brilliant Buddha's light rushed out from the entrance of the hall and shot straight into the sky. At this moment, I don't know how many sinister eyes were attracted to him. Even Qing Emperor cast a surprised look at Su Tong. On the top of the mountain, a pair of eyes that had been closed for a long time quietly opened a gap and looked sideways down the mountain. "Great Emperor, what are you looking at?" An old man appeared quietly behind him. "Future." There was a hint of brilliance in his ethereal eyes, as if he had penetrated time in an instant, looking into a future world that had not yet happened. The old man standing behind him was startled and couldn't help but said curiously, "Don't you often hear people say that the past cannot be changed and the future cannot be trusted?" After hearing the old man's inquiry, the figure sitting cross-legged at the top looked into the distance. "That's because they haven't looked far enough." Rumble. The golden clouds in the sky become more and more brilliant. The momentum was so great that ghosts and gods all over the mountain looked sideways. Many ghosts and gods wanted to take a closer look, but in the end, it seemed as if there was a force in the dark that obscured the secret of heaven, so that they could not see anything. Not enough, not enough. The elixir roared, and the elixir in the immortal furnace was about to take shape, but there were some impurities on it. These impurities are actually medicine dregs, only a few scattered ones, but at this moment, they are particularly dazzling on top of this brilliant golden elixir. It's like if you spent 300 yuan to find an old ant in the shampoo room, and then found that the old ant had a scar on her abdomen, you wouldn't think it was a big deal. But if you go to heaven and earth and spend 300,000 to get a membership card, you will not only have to look at your figure and appearance, but if you are a little dissatisfied, you will have to wave your hand and say, "Change another batch." That's exactly what it means. It is simply unforgivable that such a top-quality divine elixir should have such flaws. Su Tong was also unwilling to accept it. If the elixir was made with flaws, the quality of the elixir would be destined to drop a lot. Is there any way? Su Tong asked Danjing, and Danjing thought for a moment and said, the method of attracting thunder and quenching the pill. The so-called thunder-quenching elixir uses the power of thunder to temper the impurities in the elixir. However, this is very risky. Besides, this is the underworld. Where can there be thunder and lightning? But this was not a problem for Su Tong. Su Tong's heart moved. The little fat man with the second spirit came out of his body. He had a chubby figure and looked somewhat similar to the fat monk. The little fat man flew above the entrance of the hall, bursting out with strands of electric light. In an instant, a bolt of lightning struck through the air, penetrated into the immortal furnace, and turned into countless electric lights that hit the pills. Zitsize. Thunder quenching. The old Taoist couldn't help being shocked when he saw this. He was also a master of alchemy, but he had never mastered the thunder quenching technique. It was said that this method had been lost as early as the Sui dynasty. Unexpectedly, it would reappear in the hands of Su Tong. Suddenly thunder and lightning flashed, and the golden elixir became more and more brilliant, and the impurities on it were gradually shattered by thunder and lightning. It's done. Seeing that the elixir was about to be completed, Su Tong couldn't help but feel excited. Buzz. The golden light flashed in the fairy furnace, and with a bang, Su Tong couldn't wait to open the pill box under the fairy furnace, and wondered what the effect of this magical pill was. When the immortal furnace was opened, brilliant golden light shone on Su Tong's face, and a pill the size of an adult's thumb appeared in front of Su Tong. Hiss. For a moment, Ya and others couldn't help but take a deep breath. They would definitely not be able to take such a precious elixir, but it was good to smell it. Su Tong picked up the golden elixir and held it in his palm, his eyes almost straightened. I saw that the whole body of the golden elixir was shining with brilliant rays of light. Even though it did not have the 9th grade Dao pattern, it was no less than the 9th grade one. You can feel a powerful force surrounding this golden elixir when you hold it in your hand. There is a swastika flickering in the pill. Su Tong hurriedly put the elixir into the prop book so that he could see the efficacy of the elixir. The pill fell into the prop book and turned into a golden prop card, a shining sun, in the middle of which sat a golden monk. Dynamic prop card. Su Tong took a deep breath and looked at the entry in the prop book. Great sun casting pill, unparalleled treasure. Those who eat it can obtain the innate Tao foundation, forcibly break through the great realm, and have an 80% probability of obtaining the Godhead. If there is a Godhead, the Godhead can break through to a higher level. They say the shorter the word count, the greater the message. The entry given in the props book made Su Tong's eyes widen. Let's put aside what the innate Taoist foundation is. Forcibly breaking through a big realm, that is to say, if you eat it now, you will be able to enter the realm of enlightenment, and you don't need to wait for any opportunity. There is also an 80% chance of obtaining godhood. In other words, if you take this pill, you will be considered a member of the Shinto. Looking at the elixir in front of him, Su Tong's breathing gradually became faster, but he soon relaxed his mind and allowed his reason to gain the upper hand again. After hesitating for a moment, he put the second spirit into his body, and casually took out the merit lotus seeds given by the fool before and put them in the palm of his hand. As soon as this thing came out, the elixir on his forehead suddenly became energetic again, but Su Tong put the thing in his palm and waited, next time, definitely. After saying that, regardless of Dan Jing's surprised mood, he collected the merit lotus seeds and immediately returned to his original position. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 773. Boss, what kind of treasure are you practicing? Let us see. As soon as Yuan Shen returned to his position, Gu Zibai's urging came from the team channel. Although they couldn't see Su Tong's entrance, they could see the purple light soaring into the sky just now, not to mention they could clearly hear the conversation between the old Taoist and the fat monk. Especially when they saw the fat monk pinching a drop of golden blood on his fingertips, the eyes of the three of them almost popped out of their heads. Knowing that this fat monk had an unusual origin, I didn't expect that this drop of blood would trigger such a huge battle. It was really scary. After that, the way the three of them looked at the fat monk changed. When Su Tong heard Gao Zhou and the others explain the reason for the incident, he realized that the golden light was actually a drop of the fat monk's blood, and he couldn't help being shocked. Not caring about sharing the harvest with Gao Zhou and the others for the moment, he stood up and bowed deeply to the fat monk in front of him. Thank you, Master, for helping me. Amitabha, how good it is, how good it is. The fat monk clasped his hands together, recited the Buddha's name with a smile, and immediately said, I don't know what kind of elixir the Venerable Master has refined. Can I ask this poor monk to have a look? Of course you can. After Su Tong said that, he took out the refined sun-casting Dao pill and carefully handed it to the fat monk. As soon as the elixir came out, everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath. They felt that the elixir was as fragrant as their lungs, and they felt refreshed. The fat monk pinched his flower fingers, gently picked up the elixir, took a look at it, and nodded, It's amazing, the Venerable Master can actually practice this elixir. In the future, it will be just around the corner to kill the Tao. Oh! When Su Tong heard this, his brows moved slightly. He was still debating whether he should take this pill or not. At this moment, the fat monk's words seemed to have helped him make up his mind. But if you think about it carefully, you can understand what the fat monk said. Becoming enlightened is difficult, but compared to cutting the path, it is nothing. Since ancient times, many of heaven's proud men have been defeated by Jean Dao. Think of that earth. No, ancient Pei Yuan was a scholar of heaven and man, and he was in charge of Hunshan prison, one of the best in the world. But when it comes to Jean Dao, he has been waiting for most of his life before finally gathering three destined people. It was not easy to succeed, but in the end, Su Tong interfered, and his practice was completely interrupted. It can be said that all the mechanisms are exhausted and water is drawn from a bamboo basket. The most important thing is that everyone's Tao is different, and their obsessions are also different. Even fellow disciples, the ways of killing Tao are all strange and different. Therefore, compared to attaining enlightenment, cutting off the path is the biggest difficulty. The fat monk meant that he must be restrained before taking this elixir. Moreover, I have already received part of the opportunity to become enlightened. Although I don't know what this opportunity is about, I am not completely clueless. So thinking of this, Su Tong's eyes flickered a few times, and he made up his mind to wait until he became enlightened before taking this pill. Well, it's best to use the fantasy Rubik's Cube to strengthen it a few more times. Su Tong thought about this, and his heart almost boiled. The fat monk returned the elixir to Sutong and added a seal on it to ensure that the elixir's efficacy would not weaken over time. Hey, the food expenses these days are really not cheap. The fat monk felt this and felt that he had really lost blood this time. Sutong bared his teeth and grinned extremely happily. When I meet the master, it's like meeting my relatives. Master's words are foreign to the public. As long as you want to eat, it doesn't matter if you come to me every day in the future. When the fat monk heard this, he felt much relieved, but in the blink of an eye, he saw Sutong and others staring at his fat body with green eyes. Even though he was a fat monk, he couldn't help but shiver in his heart, thinking, "Good guy, have I fallen into a wolf's den?" The fat monk secretly complained. If he hadn't still been thinking about Lilith's cooking skills, he might have run away at this time. Sutong collected the elixir and did not forget to send the elixir's entry in the team channel so that Gao Zhou and the others could check it. Gao Zhou and the others only knew that Sutong had made a very impressive elixir, but they did not expect that it would be so perverted. His eyes turned red for a moment. It's a pity that there is only one pill, and Sutong refined it alone, so naturally they don't have a share. However, Sutong promised that after he rested for a while and refined the 6 merit lotus seeds given to him by the fool into elixirs, it would not be a problem for each of them to take one. After everyone was noisy, they began to feel a little tired. The hot spring was comfortable, but if you soaked in it for a long time, you would inevitably feel sleepy. After a night's rest, everyone left the inn early the next day and continued on the road. "Sir, please move slowly." The store owner walked to the carriage with a smile on his face to see Sutong and others out. When Sutong saw the store owner, he suddenly remembered something and took out the sign given to him by the saluting store from the prop book. "Shopkeeper, what is this? And what is it used for?" When the store owner saw the sign, he didn't say what the sign was for. Instead, he smiled and took out another sign and gave it to Sutong. "Hey, why are you giving me a signed card? Why do you need to explain this clearly?" Sutong grabbed the store owner's arm to ask for more information. But the store owner just pointed to the top with a smile. "Sir, take the sign and go up. When you get to Qian Looting Inn, give the sign to the boss. He will know when the time comes." Well, this is playing with yourself to collect cards to redeem prizes. Sutong didn't know what to say for a moment. He could only get into the carriage out of curiosity and signaled everyone to set off. After a night's rest and the hot spring in the store, when Sutong and others set out again, they couldn't feel the slightest chill from the wind. It's not cold at all, but you still have to wear thick clothes. Not far up the road, you can see a vast white world. There are also snowflakes in the underworld. Gao Zhou picked up a handful of snow and asked the fat monk. The fat monk looked as if he was very strange and said, "Not only is there snow, but there are also many things you can't think of. For example." Gao Zhou had been following Sutong for so long, and he had learned a lot about hitting snakes and hitting them with sticks. When he was hugging the fat monk's thigh, he started to ask questions. The fat monk is not stingy. The journey up the mountain is boring anyway, so he might as well talk to them about the customs of this underworld. For example, walk to the south until you reach the end, which is the Huangquan Pier. It was once the main entrance to the underworld, and countless travelers came across the Huangquan from here. Unfortunately, the gate to the underworld is closed, and the 5 ghost emperors guard the other 5 portals. Outsiders can no longer enter the underworld rashly. So the pier was abandoned, and it is still full of wreckage. If you walk to the west and reach the end, you will reach the Sea of Blood. This place where thousands of Rakshasa lives, the men are ugly, the women are charming, playing the flute every night, it is simply like a paradise in hell. However, those who indulge in it, even gods, cannot escape the end of being buried in a sea of blood. The fat monk told many stories, which made everyone fascinated. When he looked up again, he saw a world of ice and snow in front of him. "Hey, look over there." At this time, Gao Zhou suddenly noticed someone's figure on the snow in front of him. When everyone took a closer look, it turned out to be a person. No, to be precise, it should be an ice sculpture. And there was more than one. When they got closer, they discovered that there were countless ice sculptures standing in the snow. Who are these people and why are they turned into ice sculptures here? Su Tong turned around and asked. They don't deserve sympathy. These dead gods who came here smuggled in deserve to be frozen here. As the fat monk spoke, he looked very bored at these gods of death who had smuggled in. Gao Zhou originally wanted to ask what the gods of death were, but when he saw the unhappy look on the fat monk's face, he sensibly shut his mouth. The motorcade continued to move forward, and a green forest appeared in front of everyone. This forest is called Huatuk Forest, and it seems to be advising the gods of death to turn back. Unfortunately, judging from the number of ice sculptures, they don't seem to have listened to this advice. The further you go up, the heavier the snow becomes. Suddenly Su Tong's ears twitched slightly, and he heard the sound of a rushing carriage in the distance, and couldn't help but look back. As a result, there was a vast expanse of white behind them, and there was no carriage at all. It's heaven. GameElements' golden martial arts eyes flickered, piercing through the thick clouds above his head. At a glance, he saw a large number of convoys passing directly through the sea of clouds and heading straight to the top of the Yishan mountain. Don't look, that's the convoy of the two ghost emperors from Lufeng mountain. The fat monk took a glance and recognized the identity of the convoy. It seemed that the ghost emperors from all sides had already begun to enter the mountain. Lufeng mountain is located in the east of Hades. It is the first portal to the underworld, and the two ghost emperors Shentu and Yulei guard this place. It is prohibited to fly freely in Yishan, but only the 5 ghost emperors are not subject to this restriction. This is a privilege granted by the great emperor. Oh, by the way, if we go forward, we are almost there, but from now on, there will only be one great emperor, and the others are all ghost emperors. The fat monk opened his mouth to remind everyone not to shout by mistake. This is a very serious mistake. There can only be one great emperor on the Yishan mountain, and that is Fujun. The others can only be called ghost emperors. Even Emperor Fengdu is like this. Su Tong and others nodded to express their understanding. As they said this, the convoy finally passed through the dense forest, and their eyes suddenly became clear. Wow! That's the Emperor's forbidden palace. For a moment, everyone looked up, and when they saw the majestic palace in the distance, they couldn't help but let out an exclamation from deep in their hearts. From a distance, the palaces are rolling and majestic. The main halls are made of blue bricks, with carved beams and painted beams. The roofs are covered with a thick layer of white snow. After countless years of wind and rain, they exude a mysterious and ancient atmosphere. Breath. This palace surrounds the entire mountain peak from bottom to top, like a giant dragon with teeth and claws. Standing at the highest point, it looks like a green dragon roaring up to the sky. Even though they were still far apart, they could already clearly see an ancient hall. A simple palace is located on top of the dragon's head, as if it were a dragon's head crown, facing the netherworld. It was as if they were announcing to the world that the owner of this land was silently watching their every move. Su Tong. At this time, a familiar shout made Su Tong and Gao Zhou perk up, and they quickly put their heads out to follow the sound. When he saw 2 figures on the snow not far away, even though they were covered with thick snowflakes, Su Tong recognized them at a glance. They were his master and master. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 774. Master, Master. Why are you here? Su Tong jumped off the carriage and ran up quickly. Seeing that the 2 of them were already covered with a layer of snow, Su Tong immediately felt distressed and hurriedly pulled the 2 of them into the carriage. But Mr. Song waved his hand. Don't bother, we came on the Ghost Emperor's carriage and arrived one step ahead of you. I thought you should be there almost, so we are just waiting here for a while. We will follow Dujun later. Wait for the Yin gods to enter the Forbidden Palace first. Su Tong understood after Song Lao explained. It turns out that at the time of the sacrifice, the Ghost Emperors of the 5 directions, Yama of the 10 palaces, and other Yin gods will enter the palace one after another to report to the Emperor. It is similar to the annual financial report of a listed company. In addition to reporting on work, we also need to report on target planning for the coming year, etc. As the inspector under Du Ziren, the master was originally not qualified to meet the Emperor. However, during this period of time, Su Tong not only captured the Jui Ghost King, but also the Hakati of the West. Most importantly, Su Tong not only saved the fate of Buddhism with his strength, but also captured Moda. Even if it is only part of the Godhead, it can still be regarded as a rare and great contribution. Of course, all the benefits went to Master Su, but the credit naturally fell on Master. Therefore, Du Ziren made a special trip to bring his master and master together to pay homage to the Emperor. This was an honor that ordinary Yin gods could not obtain. This is also beyond the master's expectation. According to the usual practice, the Emperor will definitely give a reward. However, this reward may be a divine status, or it may be some kind of item. The two of them are waiting here, and they also want to ask Su Tong if there is anything he still lacks. If there is a chance, they can help him get it. When Su Tong heard what his master said, his nose suddenly felt sore. His grandson's treatment was nothing more than this. Master, Master, I don't lack anything now. If there is a reward, you should take it first. After all, you are my rear. If you are strong, I will be protected. Shuigui and Mr. Song shook their heads lovingly upon hearing this, and the master pointed at Su Tong's head. You have learned to be polite to us. After that, he reached out and took out a quiver. I saw 3 arrows in the quiver, each with a different shape. These are the divine arrows that match the great rhinoceros bell. I forgot to give them to you last time. I will hand them over to you this time. Each of these arrows has extraordinary divine power. Please use them carefully. The master handed the quiver to Su Tong and gave him careful instructions. Su Tong nodded and put the arrow away. At this time, the master raised his head and glanced at the convoy behind Su Tong, pulled Su Tong and lowered his voice. We have heard about the White Emperor guards. Just don't worry, I will take care of everything. The master patted his arm and gave Su Tong an encouraging look. This kind of encouragement from his master was like a shot in the arm, sweeping away all the doubts in Su Tong's heart. Okay, I've said all that needs to be said. You should go to the inn as soon as possible. We still have a long way to go. It's unreasonable to keep Du Jun's motorcade waiting for a long time. Master Song Lao urged Su Tong and the others to get on the road as soon as possible. Su Tong handed over to the two of them again and again before turning around and returning to the carriage. When I got on the carriage and took a look, I saw that the master and master were already riding on a Pegasus horse, driving quickly towards the direction of the red-walled palace. My master, master. Su Tong got on the carriage shaft, and when he saw the fat monk looking at him, he said with pride, his eyes filled with admiration, which was enough to show the status of the two of them in his heart. Even though at this moment, his strength is many times better than that of Master Shuigui, he knows it in his heart. The master was just born at the wrong time, and I was just a little luckier than the master. Amitabha, almsgiver Shui sacrificed his body to bear a bad reputation throughout the ages, but in this present age, his merits will last forever, and there will be a blessing waiting for him. The fat monk said with a smile. Su Tong was startled and a little surprised. He didn't expect that the fat monk knew about his master. Have you heard about my master's story? The fat monk smiled and said nothing when he heard the words, with an enigmatic look that made it difficult for people to figure out the reality of this guy. Taking advantage of the break in the hurry, Su Tong called out the props book and fixed his eyes on the 3 magic arrows. These 3 arrows not only look different, but also have different names. They are called Pajun, Xiaotian, and Longke respectively. Breaking Army Arrow. Passive skill, thousands of arrows fired. It consumes 3,000 script points. After launching, 1 arrow will turn into 10,000 arrows and carry out a covering strike on the front area. The damage of the arrow will be related to your own strength, please figure it out by yourself. Roaring Sky Arrow. Passive skill, Dark Moon. It consumes 3,000 script points. After being launched, the phenomenon of Tengu swallowing the moon will be summoned, causing the target creature's luck to enter a concealed state. Dragon Bird Arrow. Passive skill, Peck to Kill. It consumes 3,000 script points and launches a killing attack on the target, ignoring the target's own armor and magic weapon defense, and bursting out with unprecedented high penetrating damage. Arrow damage will be related to your own strength, please figure it out by yourself. Looking at these 3 arrows, Su Tong felt a burst of ecstasy in his heart. With this set of arrows, matched with the big rhinoceros bow, it was simply a dangerous weapon in the world. The only drawback is that once this thing is shot out, you have to pick it back up yourself. If you can't pick it back up, then you will have to use one less one. Ding. You have entered the Yushin Forbidden Palace. Ding. Within the scope of Yushin Forbidden Palace, the use of prop card skills is prohibited, and the script points are temporarily frozen. Following the prompt, Su Tong and others were startled, and quickly called out the prop book to take a look. Sure enough, all the attack prop cards in the prop book turned black, and only a few functional prop cards were normal. But the script turned completely black and was completely frozen. For players without script points, it is useless even if they hold prop cards in their hands. No wonder it's called the Forbidden Palace. Su Tong looked up at the palace in the distance. The warning sound just now was like an invisible warning, warning them not to act wild in this place. Fortunately, although prop cards and script points are banned, his physical strength has not diminished. The most important thing is that he found that this layer of confinement seemed to only target magical powers, Taoism, and his own Yinshu was not affected in any way. He then asked the old Taoist, the eldest princess and others, and found that the higher the cultivation level, the higher the intensity of the imprisonment. Qian looting, is there really such an inn? As the motorcade continued to move forward, an inn actually appeared in the distance. The inn stood at the foot of the mountain near the imperial palace, and everyone could see it at a glance. Ding! Main mission 2 completed. At this time, Su Tong also heard the prompt from the prop book, and sighed in his heart that this task in the script world was quite easy. He immediately led the team into the inn. At this moment, dozens of carriages were parked in the inn's courtyard. "Boss, look over there." Gu Zibai raised his head, and Su Tong looked around and saw hundreds of war horses in the horse pen. These horses, without exception, were exactly the same as the horses of Beatty's guard. But what Gu Zibai was referring to was not these war horses, but the 5 crimson ponies among them, the Spark-class leopard colts. It seems that the 5 demon kings have arrived. Hey, we let them run away last time, but it won't be so easy this time. Su Tong raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth, the devil incarnate. I also want to see how badass they are. Hey, I'm sorry, the guest rooms are all full, and now there are only a few large rooms left. At this time, the store owner hurriedly walked out and said to Su Tong apologetically. Full. Gao Zhou frowned and was about to speak when he heard Chang Wuji say coldly. Fart, you are fooling the ghost. The other places are not full, but your place is full? If a ghost emperor comes in person, he can only sleep in Datong shop, right? The store owner's words meant that he could only fool Gao Zhou, an idiot, but anyone with a bit of thought would find it impossible at the first thought. Moreover, Chang Wuji knew very well that this kind of inn had overlapping spaces and theoretically had at least 1,000 rooms, which would be impossible to fill. The storekeeper's face changed slightly when he heard this, and he could only smile bitterly and said, "You are unlucky here. Someone has booked all the rooms. Everyone can stay for free, except..." He. Su Tong understood immediately when he heard this, and hurried over with the 5 guys, just to strike first. "Whatever they give you, I will give you 10 times. Chang Wuji was refreshed and felt that now was the time to use the big killing weapon that he had prepared for a long time. However, the store owner said helplessly, "It doesn't matter how much money I have. They have already signed a contract with our store. Please forgive me for being helpless." After the store owner said that, he was ready to leave and didn't plan to quarrel with Su Tong and others anymore. Etc. Su Tong stretched out his hand to stop the store owner. "Sir, this is not a matter of money, it is." Su Tong waved his hand. He knew the store's difficulties, so he casually took out 2 signs and handed them to the store. "I just want to know what these things are for." Seeing the sign handed over by Su Tong, the store owner's eyes lit up and he seemed to be relieved. It turns out that the guest officer has been prepared for it. No wonder he is so calm. The store owner said this, groped for a while, then took out another sign and handed it to Su Tong. The 3 brands are the signatures of the 3 inns. When the 3 signs were put together, a strong light suddenly flashed, and the sign turned into one, with 3 words written on it, "Du Fangju." "Haha, I'm so lucky, sir. No one has been able to get into Du Fangju for a long time. It turns out that the 3 brands can be combined into a lottery. If you are lucky, you can draw some special houses. This Du Fangju is a separate house. Not only is it large enough, but most importantly, there is a 1,000-year-old camellia tree in this house, which has a unique fragrance and is a rare treat. This type of residence is not necessarily included in the booked guest room, but is an independent residence. Hee, this is such a big deal, I thought we were going to lay down the floor tonight." Gao Zhou laughed proudly when he saw this. However, Su Tong said quietly from the side, "Goodbye, I haven't slept in a place like Datongpu yet." After saying that, he handed the sign in his hand to the boss, indicating that this Tufangju would be given to Lilith and Lao Dao. He wanted to go to Datongpu with Gao Zhou and others. Head, this. Gao Zhou looked at Su Tong with a blank expression, but saw Su Tong blinking at him. Looking at Su Tong's playful smile, Gao Zhou immediately understood what Su Tong was thinking, and not only shook his head secretly, "He is still a demon king? I'm afraid there will be a time when you cry." Sure enough, Su Tong put his arm on the store owner's shoulder, and before the store owner could say anything, Su Tong sent the 2 banknotes into the store owner's arms. "They're coming." When they learned that Su Tong and others had already moved in, the eyes of the 5 little devils in the room suddenly lit up. He quickly asked, "Then are they living in the Datongpu you arranged?" "Yes, everything has been arranged, and they have all settled in." The shopkeeper nodded and brought the prepared wine and food to the table. After hearing this, the 5 people looked at each other and burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha ha, great, brother, I'm just looking forward to seeing something good tonight." The young man who spoke was none other than Xia Yan, who was knocked away by Su Tong's demonic palm yesterday. At this moment, he was already gearing up to humiliate Su Tong and others. The leader, the young man Zhou Mu, looked at the store owner and said, "When the 2 ghost kings Zhang and Yang come back in the middle of the night, you can arrange for all their evil soldiers to go into their rooms. Do you understand?" When the 4 of them heard about those evil women, they couldn't help but gasp. The underworld was vast, but when they mentioned the evil women soldiers under the 2 ghost emperors Zhang and Yang, no one would not feel chills. "This, I'm afraid something is wrong." The store owner obviously knew who those so-called evil women soldiers were, and he couldn't help but feel worried. "Hey, don't worry, this is their fate." Jomyu waved his hand to reassure the store, and then handed a packet of medicinal powder to the store. "Later, under the pretense of poor hospitality, you can send me a bunch of good wine and food, and then sprinkle this packet of medicine into the wine for me." This. The store owner looked at the medicine delivered by Jomyu and suddenly became embarrassed. However, Jomyu glared sharply, "I'm telling you, if you dare to ruin our good deeds, I will burn your shop down." Suddenly, the store owner looked embarrassed, but he dared not speak out in anger, so he could only accept the package of medicine. "Don't worry, this medicine is not a harmful poison. It will never harm them. After all, poisoning an envoy is a very serious crime." Hearing this, the store reluctantly handed over the package of medicine. After sending the store away, Jomyu didn't forget to call out a kid and kicked it, "Go and watch them, don't let go of their every move." The kid rolled on the ground and turned into a black smoke and disappeared without a trace. After making sure that nothing went wrong, Jomyu showed a smile on his face, "Play with us and we will kill you." On the other side, the shopkeeper turned around and walked out of the room. When he was far away, he looked back to make sure there was no one, then turned around and opened a door. But the store owner did not enter the door. He just handed the medicine in through the door panel on the other side. "We agreed that I can help deliver the wine, and I don't care about the rest." At this time, one hand took the medicine bag from the store owner and handed over a few ghost notes. The shopkeeper took the money and sighed, "Well, it just so happens that I should go down the mountain to retire. There is no difference between day and night in the underworld. In the gray world, everything seems to be black and white. But on Yushin, looking up, you can see a black giant star in the far distance. It's not clear whether it is the sun or the moon. However, Hades also has the characteristic of distinguishing between day and night. For example, when it is dark, the sky in Hades will become darker and darker. Often at this time, there is not even a ghost on the land of the underworld, and the yin energy is too strong, even ghosts and ghosts can't stand it." Just like at this moment, even though Su Tong was protected by a cold iron gourd and his body was incredibly strong, a cold wind hit him and he still felt cold all over. "Master, why don't you go to Dufangju instead of accompanying the rest of us to fool around here?" Su Tong's figure stood among the trees, and his figure gradually blended into the surrounding trees. He has breath of nature that can hide his breath perfectly. But the shiny bald head on the side looked particularly dazzling among the trees. "But, although the food in Dufangju is good, it's not as interesting as here. Maybe I can help." The fat monk stood aside and looked at Su Tong with a smile. "This is near the Emperor's forbidden palace. Are you not affected?" When Su Tong heard this, he not only asked suspiciously. The fat monk smiled, "Aren't you kidding me about the Emperor's forbidden palace, but this is just the outer area, and I haven't gone inside, so it won't have a big impact on the poor monk." After saying this, the fat monk changed his tone, "Besides, someone wants to harm the venerable, how can a poor monk stand by and watch?" The fat monk's words were beyond Su Tong's expectations. He stared blankly at the fat monk's bare head. "You really help me." Su Tong didn't expect the fat monk to help, and just thought he was following him all the way just to watch the show. But he didn't expect that the fat monk was willing to help him, which was a bit unexpected. "It helps, but the poor monk's temple is probably going to be repaired. See, venerable." Looking at the fat monk's chubby hands, Su Tong's eyes widened. He didn't expect that a fat guy like you, with a broad nose and big ears, would actually. "There is nothing we can do, the temple is in a bad situation." The fat monk spread his hands helplessly. In the earthly world, people would still believe in bodhisattvas and burn incense in temples to worship Buddha. But who let this be the underworld? I'm already dead and I haven't seen the Buddha to bless me. I might as well keep the money to eat, drink and have fun in the city of wasted death. For you. Su Tong was angry and funny, but he still generously handed a note to the fat monk. The fat monk took it and waved his hand. Honorable sir, there are 5 of them. Do you want to give a piece of money to 5 of them? We are being hypocritical. You can't fool a poor monk like this. This is the deposit. When it's done, I'll give you 10. Amitabha, follow the venerable master and you can eat and drink without asking. The fat monk accepted the money with a smile, and suddenly took a look and saw 2 figures walking into the hut one after another. Seeing someone walking towards them, the fat monk smiled, and when his mind moved, the surrounding void became distorted. Even though the 2 of them walked over, it seemed as if they couldn't see Su Tong and the others. This can't help but shock Su Tong. He didn't expect that the fat man didn't seem to be affected by the Forbidden Palace. Your Majesty, just take action. As long as we don't go out, they won't see us. The fat monk had already rubbed his hands, looked around, and picked up a heavy old brick on the ground. Seeing how skillfully he committed the crime, Su Tong not only twitched the corner of his mouth, but also thought to himself, well, he is more skilled than me. This bald guy is really not a good person. No, wait a minute, where are we going? Seeing the fat monk picking up the bricks and preparing to beat someone, Su Tong quickly stopped him and asked him to wait. He believed that the remaining 3 would come out in a short while. Sure enough, after a while, Zhou Mu and others also walked out, frowning and walking towards the latrine. I don't know if they drank too much, but they always wanted to relieve themselves. They just finished relieving themselves and were about to walk back, but after taking a few steps, they walked back with a grimace. Brother, are we poisoned? Why do I keep peeing? Xia Yan said with a grimace. He really couldn't urinate, but after holding it in for a while, he couldn't stand it anymore. Now he felt a dull pain in his 2 big waists. The other 3 people also looked unhappy, and Zhou Mu also felt strange, but he had checked several times and found that there was nothing wrong with him, and there was no sign of poisoning. Besides, I have never heard of any strange poison that can make people pee continuously. Could someone be trying to trick us? Suddenly someone asked. Zhou Mu disagreed with this speculation. Bullshit, no one cares about heaven and earth, who can control whether I can urinate or not? Besides, this is near the Forbidden Palace of the Great Emperor. Unless you are a ghost emperor, none of the Taoist techniques will work. As soon as these words came out, Xia Yan and others felt relieved. Yes, this is the Forbidden Palace of the Great Emperor, even if it is only on the periphery, but even if my parents come here, their strength will be greatly reduced. Unless they are at the level of the Ghost Emperor, but if they are the Ghost Emperor, who will come to punish them? Are you full after eating? Just as he was thinking about it, in the bushes, Su Tong suddenly waved his hand and saw a golden light flying out of his palm. Zhou Mu, who was reciting the incantation, suddenly slipped and subconsciously grabbed Xia Yan beside him. With this grab, Xia Yan's instinct was to retreat. But he didn't notice that Su Tong kept shining golden light behind him. Wrestling. Innate talisman skills, the talisman follows the law. Immediately Xia Yan pulled back, but instead of losing his footing, his foot slipped and he fell down. In his haste, he could only reach out to the other brother. Unexpectedly, with this pull, the other party hit him instead. The 5 people had been urinating for so long that their legs were almost weak. They couldn't dodge this time, and they fell one after another in the latrine. Suddenly, screams could be heard incessantly. Oh! Don't touch me, it's so dirty, my new clothes. Su Tong smiled knowingly when he heard the screams inside, and could already imagine the scene inside. Hey! It's so dirty that the poor monk can't bear to do it. The fat monk frowned on the side. No need to do anything, just watch. Su Tong took the fat monk and hid aside to wait. When these guys climbed out, they were already full of filth. "It's all your fault. What did you do to pull me away? Ugh. What do you blame me for? It's not because you want to drink." The 5 people helped him out of the hut. Looking at the dirty and smelly clothes, he almost felt sick. "Go back quickly and put on some clothes." Jomu said that he was about to walk into the inn, but when he reached the door, he stopped. He saw many figures sitting in the lobby of the inn, drinking. In the meantime, I saw Sutong and others sitting inside, enjoying themselves drinking and eating meat. "They are here too." Seeing this, Jomu and others' faces darkened. If they went in like this and were seen by Sutong and others, they would probably lose their face. Normally, they would be able to solve it with a purification spell, but this is the forbidden palace of the great emperor. They have the realm of enlightenment, but they cannot cast it. Just as the 5 of them were struggling, they suddenly heard the store owner's voice coming from behind. Looking back, they saw the owner of the inn walking out of a large room on the side. Jomu and others were afraid that the owner would see their embarrassment, so they hurriedly hid aside. The store owner didn't go in either. He just stood outside the door and shouted inside, "Guests, the water here has been boiled. You can wash it when you get back later." After saying that, the store owner went straight to the kitchen. When Jomu and others heard this, their faces suddenly showed joy. After looking at each other, they ran straight to the big room. When they opened the door, they saw a huge wooden bucket inside, which was filled with hot water for bathing. "The water is steaming. Haha, there is always a way, brothers, hurry up and take a shower." They immediately closed the door, took off their clothes, and plunged into the hot water. The scalding hot water fell on their bodies, not to mention how comfortable they were. Several people were washing happily, but little did they know that Sutong and the fat monk were standing outside the door at this moment. Hearing their laughter, they couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He casually took out a packet of medicinal powder that was only half empty. "I thought to myself, you will not survive if you do something wrong to yourself." With that said, he threw the packet of medicinal powder into the prop book. 100 flowers aphrodisiac powder. Contaminated with this powder, the body will be as hot as fire. The slightest thought will be uncontrollable, and the more you fight, the braver you will become. Duration, 12 hours. Note, he. Comfortable. Jomu soaked in the bucket, his body suddenly trembled, and he immediately relaxed a lot. After all, if they used it up, those people could use it too. Just as the 5 people were enjoying themselves, they suddenly heard the sound of a carriage outside the door. Immediately afterwards, I heard the store owner's voice, "Please come this way, the stove is ready and the beds are warm." Hearing the sound getting closer and closer, Jomu suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Finally he seemed to remember something. "No, let's go." As he said this, he was about to jump out of the bucket, but as soon as his upper body came out of the water, he heard a boom. The door was pushed open without mercy. A gust of cold wind howled, and I saw a dark mass in front of the door, and a plump figure like a mountain slowly walked into the door. The eyes are round, the face is black, the fangs are sharp, and the nose is big and the mouth is big. Although he was wearing a skirt, he looked like Zhang Fei, even better than Li Kuei, and he would be frightened out of fear if an evil spirit came. Jomu's expression changed, and he quickly put his head into the water and whispered, "It's bad, we went to the wrong room." The girls in this business walked in the door chatting and laughing. When they saw that the store had even prepared bath water, they couldn't help laughing like thunder. "Brother, what should I do?" Xia Yan's face had turned red and hot at this moment, and his whole body felt hot, but they didn't notice this detail. They just looked at these terrifying figures walking in, and their hearts trembled. This was originally a script they designed, but unexpectedly they used it for themselves. "Don't be afraid. I'll count to 3 and we'll rush out together." By the time they react, we'll have already run away. Zhou Mu swallowed and said calmly. Although the power of the Emperor's Forbidden Palace suppressed their Taoism, their strength was already good, and they could only rush out in the blink of an eye. Immediately, Zhou Mu took a deep breath and silently counted 3 times, "Run." The word "run" was heard, and 5 people jumped out of the bucket like fried fish. They ran straight to the door regardless of whether they were naked or not. "Ha ha, let's go." Zhou Mu reached out and pulled the door, but the door didn't move at all. I heard Su Tong's voice from outside the door, "The car door is sealed, no one can get out of the car tonight." Sorry, this chapter is a bit long, so I wrote it a little late. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 775. Boom, boom, boom. "Let us out. Help." The harsh banging on the door and the cry for help became more and more harsh through the door. Su Tong could even hear the crying screams among them. "But, that's very good. Isn't this a bit too much?" Even though the fat monk heard the screams inside, he couldn't help but feel a little unbearable. But Su Tong said with a nonchalant look on his face, "It's just a way of repaying the other person, so there's nothing to be pitiful about. Does the master plan to suffer for them? If I hadn't spent money to bribe the boss, I'm afraid they would be the unlucky ones now. It sounds like they deserve it. They forced the boss to sign a contract with them for just the price of a piece of money. In comparison, Su Tong is much more generous. If one is not enough, I will give you 10, and each one is a genuine note stamped with the Emperor's seal. After spending this money, the boss even wants to transfer the inn to Su Tong. As for why they pee frequently, it is even simpler. Su Tong put the innate talisman night urination technique under the wine pot. As long as you drink from that hip flask, you will naturally fall into the trap. Not only that, even the bottom of the bathtub was marked with weapon strength 99 by Su Tong. Together with the aphrodisiac that Zhou Mu took out, hey, they couldn't even think of getting out of the bath that night. Sure enough, the screams didn't last long, and the sounds inside the door gradually began to become weird. Su Tong didn't have the bad habit of listening to people in the corner. He took out the hookah pipe from the props book and squatted aside to smoke it. Listening to the painful and happy wails in the room, his heart suddenly filled with inspiration, and he planned to write a poem based on this scene. A song comes. I didn't expect that the venerable master actually knows the art of Yan, and can capture the innate spiritual talisman for his own use. It's just a poor monk who knows how to do it. The fat monk couldn't help but sigh. Master knows Yanshu. Su Tong knew that his Yanshu could not be hidden from the master, so he pretended to be surprised just to hear the fat monk's evaluation of Yanshu and see if he could extract some useful information. You know, during the Shang and Zhou dynasties, Yanshu was popular all over the world. The emperor of the Zhou dynasty once opened a college for Yanshi. The power of Yanshu has become the mainstream in the world. When the fat monk talked about that period of history, his eyes couldn't help but reveal a bit of nostalgia. At that time, Master Yan was so powerful that he could see through the heavens and the earth. He was so powerful in the world with his Yanshu that he could turn the world upside down with a single thought. Powerful enough to make even the ancient gods fearful. When Su Tong heard the fat monk talking about the glory of Yanshu Master, he couldn't help being shocked, but he also had questions in his heart. If it is so powerful, why has Yanshu been completely cut off by now, and there is not even a single record? I only heard a few words about Yanshu from my master's wife, and other than that, I only learned about it from Mei Xian. I have never heard of other legends about Yanshu, and even if they exist, they seem to be fabricated out of thin air. Regarding Su Tong's question, the fat monk did not explain. He just frowned and remained silent for a while before saying, "There is Tao but no technique. Techniques can still be sought. There are techniques but no Tao, and it stops at technique." Su Tong's eyes lit up when he heard this, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but turn up. If you control your skills with the Tao, your skills will be successful. If you leave the Tao, your skills will fail. Right, it's said in Laozi's Tao Te Ching. Every time I was caught by the master and endorsed, I finally didn't read it in vain and finally found a place to use it. As a result, the fat monk looked at Su Tong with a strange face. That sentence of yours was said by Zhuangzi. Su Tong, embarrassing. But Zhuangzi said it more appropriately. Anyway, the disappearance of Yan Shu stems from this. Venerable sir, you should take care of yourself. The fat monk's words were both a reminder and a warning. Yanshu was once glorious and powerful, and the Yanshu Academy once used this powerful technique to create a war machine that could kill gods. But such a brilliant fruit was just a flash in the pan and withered in an instant, so that not even a single word was left. The fat monk did not explain what happened, but he pointed out the source of the trouble. It's a pity that Su Tong didn't understand the mystery yet, and just kept it in his mind for the time being. The room in front of him was still very lively, and Su Tong didn't know how long they could keep going. Under the night sky of Hades, the black moon slowly rose in the distance. The snow was falling heavily and it was getting colder. Even though he was a fat monk, he didn't want to stay outside any longer and got up to go into the hall to drink. Are you planning to stay overnight? Looking back at Su Tong, he saw Su Tong writing something on the ground with a branch, so he asked him to go in early so as not to get frozen outside. Hey, don't worry, I'll write a song for them. Su Tong held the branch in his hand, scrawled on the ground, and then threw the branch away. Done. The fat monk squinted his eyes, shook his head with a wry smile, and walked into the hall to drink. Not long after, everyone drinking in the hall heard a burst of hoarse singing outside the door. That night, I drove you, that night you felt very happy, that night you grew up a lot, that night I wrote this song for you. The singing echoed in the heavy snow. Under the Zhuqiang Palace, a group of heavily armored warriors heard the singing, and a hint of reminiscence appeared on their dull faces. The singing along with the heavy snow creates an imaginative picture. But it has since become a lingering nightmare in the hearts of some people. Hiccup. Early the next morning, when Gao Zhou and others walked out of the hall after eating and drinking, they were immediately shocked. Why are there so many people? I saw many people surrounding the small courtyard of the inn, and there were many evil spirits among these people. Everyone's eyes widened, and they peered through the crack in the door to look into the main store. Boom. The door was roughly pushed open, and when they saw the figure walking out, the onlookers dispersed in an instant. Gu Zibai took a closer look and immediately rubbed his teeth, thinking, oh my god, these girls are so ugly. I saw these few people, all of them were more than 2 meters tall, with broad shoulders and round waists. They stood there like a hill. It has a red and black face and 2 protruding fangs at the corners of its mouth. The tiger's eyes glared, and a fierce aura emerged spontaneously, which was intimidating, but at this moment, their faces were all full of shyness, and their shy looks, well, it's indescribable. It reminds me of the joyful expression of the black bear spirit when he stole the cassock in Journey to the West. Su Tong hid aside and shook his head when he saw this. It was dark last night and he didn't look so carefully. Now that he looked at it, he realized that his sin last night seemed to be a bit big. Amitabha. The fat monk whispered, they are all personal guards of the 2 ghost kings Zhang and Yang. Although they are not good looking, they are definitely no match for other gods. It's okay. Gao Zhou looked indifferent to this, which made everyone look at him with admiration. Gao Zhou curled his lips and said, compared with my wife, they are pretty good. The fat monk even clasped his hands together. It seems that the donor is also a true bodhisattva who sacrifices himself for righteousness. Don't talk nonsense, your wife is not ugly. Su Tong kicked Gao Zhou on the butt and was about to defend Fengxia, but when he thought of that face. For it. Su Tong didn't know how to describe it. Whoa. there was a burst of crying in the room, and Jomyu and the other 5 people rushed out of the room with their faces covered. I don't know where the original clothes on my body have gone. I ran out naked, without caring about anything. I rushed out the door and ran out. Everyone wanted to laugh when they saw this. After all, these 5 little devils do a lot of immoral things on a daily basis. Seeing that they were so unlucky, I felt a sense of joy in my heart. However, when they saw the 5 people's fighting strength undiminished, everyone couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration in their hearts. Boy, if you humiliate us like this, we will definitely fight you to the death. After running outside the door, Jomyu didn't forget to cover his face, turned around, and cursed at Su Tong. Su Tong went in and out of his left ear and didn't respond to them at all. Seeing that Su Tong was silent, Jomyu cursed, "Don't think I can't find out where you are, just wait." As he said this, he whistled, and the leopard colt from the Xingguo class neighed and rushed out of the horse pen. The 5 people got on their mounts and flew down the mountain in a hurry. But there is a high probability that they are going to Fuzi City. Your Majesty, please be more careful in the future. The fat monk reminded him. This time the knot has become bigger, and it cannot be easily resolved. Don't you still have it? Su Tong blinked at the fat monk. You said you wanted to help last night, but you didn't even move a finger. You can't take my 10 ghost notes for nothing. The fat monk was stunned when he heard this. He never expected that Su Tong wouldn't let him take action last night, so he was waiting for him here? After thinking about it, the fat monk didn't want to get involved in this matter rashly. It wasn't that he was afraid of those 5 brats, but it was just inappropriate to involve him in this matter. So he gritted his teeth and said, "Well, I've taken all the money from the poor monk and won't help you. I'll give you another opportunity. As for whether you can grasp it, I can't guarantee it." "Oh, what an opportunity, tell me." Su Tong immediately became energetic when he heard this. But the fat monk pointed to the sky. "The opportunity has not come yet, so we can't say it yet. Besides, the sacrifice is about to begin." As the fat monk finished speaking, Su Tong and others suddenly noticed that it was starting to get light. "Is this sunshine?" Su Tong stretched out his palms and felt the warmth brought by the sun. He felt incredible. Is there still a sun in the underworld? Boom! As soon as the bell rang, a bright and dazzling sun actually rose above the palace. Everyone felt warm all over. Bathed in the sunshine, their whole bodies felt lighter. Then this great sun continued to rise, rushed down to the top, and flew towards the land of the underworld. Whether it's the city of Fuzi, those tribes, or even those lonely ghosts wandering in the wilderness, everyone raised their heads and looked at the light like daylight in front of them. Even monsters in the yin and yang dao will stop killing and enjoy the warmth brought by this light, even if it is only for a moment. This is the Emperor's blessing for the thousands of ghosts in the underworld. Only on this day will the underworld have a different color. It is said that there is a sun on the mountain behind the Emperor. Every year when the bell rings, the Emperor will briefly release the sun for a moment, the fat monk said. This is not only to let the ghosts and ghosts on the underworld feel a moment of warmth, but also to dispel the accumulated evil in the underworld. It is said that ghosts bathed in sunlight, even if they have been lost, have a chance to regain their sanity for a moment. Buzz. At this time, the closed gate of the Forbidden Palace slowly opened, and a strong wind swept away the snow in front of the palace gate. The door slowly opened, and an old man came out, holding a golden scroll in his hand. "Your Majesty has been sacrificed, the gods are arranged in order, enter the palace to worship." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 776. Here we go. Su Tong looked at the open palace door and couldn't help but get excited. Go, go, you have to follow. The fool walked out of Dufangju at some unknown time. He also took out a set of Yin Shen's clothes and stuffed them into Su Tong's arms. He pushed Su Tong to ask him to follow Lilith's carriage. As for Gao Zhou and others, they wanted to follow, but they were stopped by the fool. You can't go. Those without divine status are not allowed to enter the palace. Huh? Then, are you going to run with us all the way together? Gao Zhou originally wanted to go in and take a look, even just for a quick look, but he didn't expect that he couldn't even get through the door. But it's a blessing if you can't get in. The fat monk smiled and took Gao Zhou's arm, and whispered, the poor monk just said that there is an opportunity for you to wait for. You can come with me later. After hearing what the fat monk said, Gao Zhou and the others settled down and waited for Su Tong to come back. Kaka kaka. Under the guidance of the mountain ghost, the carriage was pulled to the front of the huge palace gate. Su Tong followed, looking at the palace gate getting closer and closer. His heartbeat couldn't help but start to accelerate. In front of the palace gate, the guards wearing ancient armor were like motionless ice sculptures. No matter how cold wind blew here, their bodies never wavered. But those eyes were shining with a fascinating light. The carriage was still far away, and the mountain ghost began to make low sounds, and was very resistant to moving forward. It was as if the forbidden palace in front of him was as terrifying as an ancient giant beast. At this time, the old man who had just held the decree stood in front of the mountain ghost. The old man was dressed in a green robe, with a long beard and white hair. He looked like an immortal. After looking at the mountain ghost up and down, he said to Su Tong, "Mountain ghosts and spirits are not allowed to enter the palace. Let them go back. We will pull the carriage. Please get off the messenger and enter the palace on foot." The old man's voice was very gentle, but every word struck people's hearts like a brand, leaving no room for objection. Su Tong glanced at the old man in front of him, then stepped forward and patted the mountain ghost, signaling him to go to the inn and wait. The mountain ghost suddenly felt like he was being pardoned. He removed the rope from his body and ran back to the inn, rolling and crawling all the way. Buzz. The door of the carriage was slowly opened. Su Tong looked back and was immediately stunned by Lilith in front of him. The luxurious black dress did not cover Lilith's proud figure, but instead highlighted her nobility as a hell princess. After her long hair was carefully taken care of, she put on a crown that symbolized Western divine power. She walked out of the carriage gracefully, held up a corner of her skirt with both hands, and bowed to the old man in front of her. Every move she makes is like a noble black swan. Invite the envoy to enter the palace. The old man nodded and moved out of the way. As the escort, Su Tong could only walk beside Lilith and enter the palace with her. The moment he passed through the palace gate, Su Tong suddenly felt his body sink. Not to mention Yanshu, even the physical strength seems to have been taken away, and he has completely become an ordinary person. Su Tong didn't give up and tried to use his divine eye to look around, but he couldn't use his third eye either. However, what surprised him was that the divine eye was unable to be used, but the life icon was not affected. This really surprised him. But after thinking about it, I felt relieved. Although most of my prop cards were sealed, source was not affected. It seems to be because the prop card source is not a regular prop card. Since it is not sealed, he can naturally use the life icon. Using the life icon, he carefully looked around, and wherever he looked, he saw purple energy rising, and every palace in front of him shone with a different light. Especially above the Forbidden Palace and on the top of the secluded mountain, Su Tong saw a huge ancient pine standing on the top of the mountain, emitting a huge green light, like a giant blue dragon lying on the top of the mountain. That's the old pine that the fat monk mentioned. Su Tong's heart moved, and he remembered that the fat monk had said before that if he could pick off an old pine tree, he would know the truth about the world of the script. Just as Su Tong was lost in thought, the sound of the prop booklet sounded in his ears. Ding. Side Mission 1, Visit the Forbidden Palace. Mission description: the legendary Forbidden Palace is a forbidden area that even the gods dare not set foot on. Since you are lucky enough to enter, why not visit it? Mission requirements: explore one of the 13 halls of the Forbidden Palace without alerting the guards. Mission failed. Ding. Side Mission 2, the top of the mountain. Mission description: climb to the top of Yushin Mountain. Mission requirements: climb to the top of Yushin without alerting the guards. Mission failed. At this time, a prompt sounded in his ears, indicating that he had triggered the side mission. Just seeing the reminder of the task, Su Tong couldn't help but smile bitterly. There was basically no possibility of completing this task. Even the gods dare not break into the forbidden area. If you let yourself break in, it would be a little too high of yourself. But having said that, since I have a magical life I may not have no chance. Just as he was thinking about it, he walked with Lilith and lined up behind the ghosts and gods. Obviously it is not easy to enter the palace and meet the legendary emperor. Su Tong looked around, but he didn't see his master or master. He was surrounded by black ghosts and gods, wearing the same black official uniform as himself. Whispering Palace. There was a summons in the main hall, and a yin god stepped forward, but did not enter the main hall. Instead, he stood under the main hall. After respectfully paying homage, he handed a heavy document to the guard on the side. Seeing this, Su Tong seemed to understand that he didn't seem to be qualified to enter the hall. You will call me later and send Lilith up by yourself. This mission will be considered completed. Thinking of this, Su Tong felt a lot more relaxed. As for whether he can enter the main hall or not, he actually doesn't care in his heart. The master also said before that with his status, he may only be able to kneel down outside the main hall to worship. It seems that what he said is true at all. It's just that the protagonist has been replaced by himself. What do you like to eat? While waiting, Lilith suddenly asked. This sentence without beginning or end made Su Tong frown and think about the food in his mind. Egg fried rice. Maybe this is not a delicious dish, but Su Tong remembers that when he was a child, he made a mistake and was locked up in a small dark room. He was hungry for 3 days. The first meal he let out was egg fried rice. Although it was a bit mushy, it was definitely my most unforgettable meal. You have such a picky mouth. Lilith raised a smile on her lips, and immediately looked at Su Tong. If I can go back alive, I will make egg fried rice for you next time. Su Tong was startled, and when he was about to ask her what she meant, he heard a summons coming from the main hall. Yinkasi, receive the envoy. Hearing the summons, Su Tong was grabbed by Lilith's arm and walked forward before he could recover from Lilith's words. She lowered her voice and said to Su Tong, "Do you know why I chose you to be my escort?" Lilith's unprovoked words suddenly made Su Tong alert. He looked up at Lilith and saw her raising her head and looking straight ahead. Su Tong followed her gaze and saw the Yin Shen on both sides tilting their heads and squinting at him. When he walked to the main hall and knelt down to worship, he carefully raised his head and looked at the huge palace in front of him. When he looked around, he suddenly felt cold all over, and a pressure like a tide came over him. It seemed as if several eyes were looking at him from the palace in an instant. In the state of Minji and Kimin, Su Tong could see countless sword blades approaching him with terrifying edges. In an instant, even his own luck began to take a turn for the worse. Fortunately, at this moment, Lilith blocked Su Tong in time, which allowed Su Tong to recover. He was sweating profusely for a while, and his back was soaked with cold sweat. Recalling the looks he had just received from the palace, Su Tong felt like he was about to disappear into ashes. It's for yourself. Su Tong's eyes showed surprise and horror. Is it by Emperor? Among the people he had offended, it seemed that only Bai De could sit high in that palace. But then I thought about it and felt something was wrong. The eyes that looked at him just now didn't seem to be just one. Who else could it be besides Baidu? Why do they want to kill me? Thinking of this, Su Tong looked coldly at Lilith in front of him. What on earth are you doing here? From the moment Baidu started sending people to intercept, Su Tong had a vague feeling that something was wrong. Until now, this bad premonition became even stronger. I'm sorry to bring you into this, but besides you, I really don't know who I can trust in this place. Lilith looked at Su Tong with a little apology. Remember, this thing is the guarantee of our survival. You must not lose it. Su Tong felt his palms getting cold, as if something had fallen on his palms. He was about to look at it, but was stopped by Lilith's eyes. Then Lilith took a deep breath and slowly walked towards the main hall under the gaze of all the ghosts and gods. Elegant steps, every step taken very firmly. Su Tong took the opportunity to throw the things in his hand into the prop book and squinted his eyes. Only then did he see clearly that it was a black key. It was unknown what kind of material it was made of, and it looked more primitive as if it were polished from stone. A strange stream of light shone on the stone from time to time. When he wanted to look at the entry for this thing, the prop book showed no response, not even a question mark for him. Just when Su Tong was wondering, the guard on the side finally became impatient and scolded him in a cold voice. The Yinkasi has already paid his respects to the envoys. If you still don't step back, go to the side hall and wait. This scolding woke Su Tong up, quickly stood up, turned around and walked towards the so-called side hall. The so-called side hall is actually a small room in the distance. Most Yin gods can basically leave after completing their worship. As the reception envoy, Su Tong's task is not completely over yet. After all, the reception must also be in charge. So I will be arranged to wait here. As for how long to wait, that is another matter. Su Tong walked to the door and was about to open the door and go in. He glanced sideways at the top of the Forbidden Palace and the top of the secluded mountain. He couldn't help but frown slightly. Maybe this is also a chance. As the saying goes, the timid are starved to death and the bold are starved to death. Although I don't know what Lilith is going to do, she will definitely attract everyone's attention. This is a huge opportunity for me. Thinking of this, he glanced at the guards in the distance again. Seeing that no one paid attention to him, he simply took a quick step, jumped into the side door, and groped towards the top of the mountain. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 777. A group of guards wearing armor walked slowly past the high vermilion wall with neat steps. Only after the guard walked away did a sneaky shadow peek out from the corner. Fortunately, I have the life icon. Su Tong blinked, secretly glad that although his prop card was sealed and even his physical power was suppressed, the life icon was not affected. With the help of the Minjian Kimen, Su Tong can even detect the guards coming towards him in advance. The luck of these guards is very unique, and they are enveloped in a gray-white aura, as if they are closely connected to the secluded mountain at their feet. But it is not difficult to understand. As the imperial guards in the great emperor's palace, their fate is naturally to coexist with this secluded mountain. As for whether these guards were suppressed in strength like himself, Su Tong didn't know, but he was keenly aware that the aura of these guards seemed to only have a range of about 15 meters. In theory, that is to say, as long as you don't get close to this range, you may not have no chance of being careful. This is only theoretical. Su Tong has no idea whether it is really the case. All I can say is that if there is a chance, I want to try it. What if it succeeds? It has to be said that Su Tong is really bold, but he is by no means reckless. At present, the most famous ghosts and gods in the underworld are staring at Lilith in the front hall, including the Supreme Lord of the underworld. Who would care about this little mouse like him? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he misses this opportunity, Su Tong really can't think of any other way to climb to the top of Yushan Mountain under the eyes of the Lord. I hope Lilith's tribute is enough to attract the eyes. Su Tong prayed secretly and then walked carefully along the wall. It is strange to say that this emperor's forbidden palace is known as a forbidden place where gods and gods dare not set foot, but there are no restrictions at all inside. But after thinking about it, I felt relieved. What kind of prohibition trap is really meaningless to an eternal otaku like the emperor? Just like a otaku who never worries that his home will be noticed by thieves. Especially if this otaku is still the national Sanda champion, maybe he will look forward to this kind of thief. Regardless of whether the emperor expected Su Tong to be a thief, the lack of restrictions saved him a lot of trouble. As he carefully avoided the guards along the way, Su Tong soon discovered an embarrassing problem for him. I seemed to be lost. Although he was walking towards the top of the mountain, the twists and turns of the Forbidden Palace made him go further and further away. Just when Su Tong wanted to retreat and change his route to another route. When I turned around, my heart suddenly skipped a beat, and I saw a figure of a guard walking towards me from behind me. Seeing this, Su Tong could only give up the idea of changing the route, turned around and continued walking along the corridor, but before walking far, he saw a gray aura in front of him heading towards him. "Why do you still have one?" Su Tong's heart sank slightly, and he found that there was no hiding place on either side. There were towering palace walls beside him, but Su Tong did not dare to climb up. Although it was his first time here, it was not the first time he had entered the palace in the script world. There might be a hidden whistle on the roof of this building, so I only dared to show my head, fearing that I would be exposed in the blink of an eye. Seeing that the march was getting closer and closer, the expression on Su Tong's face gradually became serious. Da-da-da-da. The sound of neat footsteps was getting closer and closer. Two guards came one after another, holding spears and spears as they passed each other. Step by step, they got further and further away. Only after leaving this corridor did Su Tong breathe a sigh of relief. So close. He looked down at the dog holes at his feet. There was more than one, and there was another dog hole on the left. These dog holes were not big, but they were just big enough for an adult to get out. However, compared to the dog he saw when he went up the mountain before, Su Tong suspected that this might be the hole dug by the dog when it was relatively young. Didn't the fat monk also say that the dog was raised by the emperor alone? But in this way, I seem to be a little lost. Going back again might not be a good choice. After all, the guards had not gone far yet, and they might still be caught if they walked back. I simply kept walking along the dog hole, wherever I could go, but if it didn't work, I could only resign myself to fate. At the moment, Su Tong could only search for dog holes all over the place, and drill into holes when he saw them. Although he was embarrassed, he found that drilling into dog holes did have an advantage. The distance was almost shortened by half, and the distance to the top of Yushan Mountain was getting closer and closer. When Su Tong climbed out of a hole, he looked up and saw an octagonal tower appearing in front of him. The tower looks a bit like a miniature version of heaven. There are 3 floors in total, and a bell hangs from each of the 8 corners. Yushuzai. Looking at the inscription on the plaque, Su Tong didn't know where it was, but behind the building, he could see a stone staircase leading to the top of the mountain. Seeing this, Su Tong's eyes lit up, and just as he was about to continue walking up the mountain, he heard the sound of footsteps approaching. When Minjian Kimin opened his eyes, he found that the surroundings were already full of guards. Seeing this, Su Tong frowned and didn't care much. He quickly walked to the door of the building, stretched out his hand and pushed it. He saw that the door of the building was unlocked. He just crept in quietly. After a while, I heard footsteps coming from outside the door, as if all the guards' routes would eventually converge here. 6 or 7 groups of Imperial guards met in front of the building gate, rearranged their routes, and then gradually dispersed. Fortunately, these guards never approached the pavilion, nor did they find Su Tong hiding in it. Otherwise, they would have been unable to fly. After waiting for the guards to leave, Su Tong breathed a sigh of relief and then turned around to look at the building. Su Tong was also secretly surprised at this look. The building looked like it had 3 floors. But when he came in, he realized that what he saw outside was all an illusion. There was no 3 floors in this building at all. You could see the dome at a glance. There is a staircase on the left. It's just that this staircase doesn't go up, but down. Is it the basement? Su Tong walked to the stairs and looked down, only to see a dark place inside. Even with Su Tong's dark vision and the Kimon's life eye, he couldn't see clearly what was underneath. But the more this happened, the more curious Su Tong became. Although I don't know what is underneath, a building was built outside to cover up this entrance. There is no way it contains any shocking secrets. Didn't I happen to have a mission, which was to explore one of the 13 palaces? Although I didn't know if this counted, but it was still the same sentence. You're already here, it would be rude if you didn't go down and take a look. When he thought of this, Su Tong walked down on tiptoes. At this moment, outside the Emperor's forbidden palace, Gao Zhou and the other 3 were also walking down. They were just walking down the mountain. They followed the fat monk all the way down the mountain until they were halfway up the mountain. This place is already far away from the forbidden palace of the great emperor. Going further down is the Inbaler Pavilion. Come this way. The fat monk looked around, and after making sure there was no one around, he pulled Gao Zhou and the others into the bushes nearby. I don't know how long I walked, but I just felt a stench filling the surrounding air, and the surrounding woods and flowers were extremely lush. As soon as they passed through the forest, their eyes suddenly opened up. Gao Zhou took a look and realized that they were halfway up the mountain. The fat monk continued to walk forward until he came to the edge of the cliff in front of him, then he stopped. Looking at the bottomless cliff in front of him, Gao Zhou couldn't help but look down for a while, and then looked back at the fat monk. Master, what did you bring us here for? Gao Zhou looked around and felt a little nervous. This place was very hidden. If anyone wanted to kill anyone here, it would be a good place. But the poor monk has accepted the Venerable's money, so he must repay the Venerable's cause and effect. Therefore, I brought you here just to have a great opportunity with you. As soon as they heard about the opportunity, the 3 of them immediately became energetic. What is the opportunity? Gu Zibai knew very well that the more opportunities, the better. Especially for a pure martial arts path like his, without the blessing of opportunities, it would be useless to practice hard until the end of the year of the monkey. The fat monk just smiled indifferently when he heard this, with an enigmatic expression that made it impossible to figure out what he was thinking. He only said, "The secret of heaven must not be leaked." After that, he pointed at the abyss in front of him. Although this opportunity is good, I don't know if you have the courage to take it. When the 3 of them saw the fat monk pointing his finger into the abyss, they were startled and couldn't help but hesitate. This cliff is so deep that the fat monk wants them to jump off. If they were to jump down, even though they were quite strong, but they didn't have the ability to fly into the sky and escape from the ground, life or death would be hard to say. Just as the 3 of them were hesitating, Chang Liuju sneered, "I thought it was nothing more than that." After saying that, without waiting for Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai to come to their senses, they quickly walked to the edge of the cliff and said to the fat monk, "I have nothing but the courage of a leopard, so I'll go." As soon as the words fell, Chang Liuju jumped up, flipped twice in the air, then spread his arms and jumped off the cliff with an extremely graceful posture. It would be a pity not to participate in diving. Hiss. The 2 of them were shocked when they saw this. Unexpectedly, Chang Wuhan jumped as fast as he asked without hesitation at all. Gao Zhou walked quickly to the edge of the cliff, looked at Chang Wuhan's figure disappearing into the darkness, and couldn't help but whisper to himself. No wonder the boss often says that this guy is not a good person. He is indeed a ruthless person. After finishing speaking, Gao Zhou turned back to look at the fat monk. As a result, he saw that the fat monk had a strange face. He pointed to the thick vines at his feet and said, "I mean, you guys can climb down from here." Gao Zhou. Gu Zibai. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 778. Da. Su Tong stepped on the green bricks and walked down the steps step by step. This step was deeper than he thought and he didn't know where it led. But the further down you go, the smell of blood wafts in the air. This made Su Tong frown, and he suddenly became alert. At this moment, a scarlet light flashed under the steps in front of him. Su Tong walked down the steps and took a look. In front of him was a huge prison cell. Each one of them was like a giant pillar, and each one made Su Tong feel his own insignificance. When he raised his head, he saw a dozen dragon-like iron ropes running through from all directions. One end of the iron ropes extended deep into the cell, as if it was imprisoning something. I didn't expect that there would be such a big prison hidden under the Emperor's forbidden palace. Su Tong's heart was filled with turmoil, and his reason was telling him to leave as soon as possible and not to provoke things here. But Su Tong was not a person who listened to reason. His strong curiosity made him eager to know who was qualified to be imprisoned in this place. Immediately, he looked at the huge cell in front of him with his life icon. The result was chaos and nothing could be seen. But even so, Su Tong was not willing to approach the cage rashly. He looked around and found that there seemed to be a stone tablet next to the cage. So he walked over and took a look, and saw 8 big characters written on the stone tablet. His sins are hard to erase, and he will always be in the secluded mountains. 8 big characters with a stylus and a silver hook. Even though Su Tong was determined, when he saw these 8 characters, he couldn't help but feel an irresistible sense of oppression. It even made it impossible for him to get close to this prison. Taking a closer look, Su Tong found that there was a seal in the lower left corner of the stone tablet. Seeing this, Su Tong seemed to have thought of something, rummaged through the props book, and then casually took out a seal. Looking at each other, it turned out to be the seal of the great emperor. It seems that this place is the emperor's handiwork. Just when Su Tong wanted to see if there was anything else here, the originally dark cage in front of him suddenly burst into flames. Su Tong's heart tightened and he stepped back. Inside the cage, he saw a huge head. The head was wrapped in hot flames, as bright and hot as a sun. The gasping sound of the head rushed out of the cell with a fiery storm. Just one breath turned this place into a huge oven. The hoarse voice echoed in the prison, and the extremely high temperature inside the prison made it difficult for Su Tong to open his eyes. Every breath he took was as painful as stuffing a red-hot iron into his mouth. He had to retreat step by step until he retreated to a safer place before stopping. Fortunately, I have a very high resistance to flames, otherwise I would have been cooked by the heat right now. At this time, the head slowly squirmed, and the face was close to the edge of the cage. 2 burning eyeballs stared at Su Tong. "Young man, I have been waiting for you for a long time." But when he heard this, Su Tong rolled his eyes and thought to himself, "Can't you idiots just change your rhetoric?" The other party did not notice the disdain in his eyes, and continued, "I feel the same source of power in you. My child, let me out, and I can give you power you can't imagine." "I can't imagine what kind of power it is." Su Tong blinked and asked seriously. The huge head trembled a few times, as if he didn't expect Su Tong to ask such a question. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. He was silent for a while, and then he said, "The original power of fire is enough to make you burn all the heavens sky. No one in the sky or on earth can stop your progress, and even if you are willing, you can turn the whole world into a sea of hell and fire." Such impassioned speeches made Su Tong almost fall asleep. It wasn't that he wasn't interested, but that he had heard countless versions of this rhetoric in the hospital before he became a player. The situation in front of me is obviously outdated. However, Su Tong still pretended to be very interested, stretched out his palm and said, "Then give it to me. You have to let me out first." The head twisted a few times, but the iron rope behind the head was pulled back. Only then did Su Tong notice that these iron ropes were all stuck on the back of the head like iron nails. Seeing this, Su Tong spread his hands helplessly. "You really think highly of me? You are so powerful that you can't get out. How can I let you out?" "No, you can. You have a big seal on your hand. As long as you put that big seal on the stone tablet, you can let me out." At this point, the huge head began to get excited. At the same time, Su Tong also received a reminder from the side mission. Side Mission 3, Liberate the Ancient God. Mission description: when you hold the key to liberating the ancient god, you only need to unlock his shackles to get everything you want. Mission completed, you can obtain the inheritance of the ancient gods. Mission failure, no penalty. Seeing the prompt from the props book, Su Tong's eyes flickered. He looked sideways at the stone tablet in front of him and the great emperor's seal in his hand, and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of spit. He walked forward slowly and raised the big seal on his hand. This move undoubtedly caused the head in the cage to breathe rapidly for a moment. He had been imprisoned for who knows how many years, and he was already desperate. And now that hope is right in front of him, one can imagine how excited he is. But at this time, Su Tong's hand stopped and he put the seal back. "You haven't told me yet, who are you and why are you locked up here?" When the head saw this, his eyes suddenly widened, and the blazing flame gradually turned blue-white, but unfortunately, neither the chains imprisoning him nor the cell in front of him seemed to have changed at all. Seeing this, he could only take a deep breath, force himself to calm down, and use gentle words as much as possible to say to Su Tong, "I am Zhu Rong, the god of fire. My child, part of your strength is inheritance and in other words, you are also my descendant. Vulcan Zhurong." This answer surprised Su Tong, because he had heard this name in the fairy tale, Wrathful Buzhu Mountain. "I didn't expect to see him alive today." What made him even more curious was why Zhurong was locked up here with only one head left. Facing Su Tong's inquiry, Zhurong was silent for a while and then said, "This matter is too complicated. I won't be able to explain it clearly to you for a while. All you need to do is open the ban and send me out. With this favor, I will, in the name of Zhurong, I promise you that I will repay you twice as much." "Oh." Su Tong raised his head. "Then I'll think about it." "Consider?" "Consider what?" Hearing this, Zhurong could hardly suppress his emotions any longer, and the flames changed from bluish-white to deep purple. The terrifying high temperature suddenly caused the surrounding space to begin to distort. Su Tong flicked his fingers and saw a paper airplane pop out of his hand, but before he could get closer, it turned into a spark and disappeared completely, leaving not even a trace of dust behind. Su Tong had no doubt that, let alone a piece of paper, even if he got close to it at this moment, the end would probably be the same as that piece of paper. Facing Zhurong's questioning, Su Tong's expression was particularly calm. "Although the conditions you gave are very tempting, I don't think I can walk down the mountain safely if I let you go." Sitting above his head are the 5 ghost emperors, the 5 emperors demon kings, and the lord of the palace. It can be said that most of the supreme gods and demons in the underworld are there. Rather than saying that they don't think highly of themselves, it's better to say that they don't think highly of the Zhurong clan. Since he can be suppressed by the emperor here, it means that the emperor can suppress him a second time at any time. By then, he, the chief culprit, may not be able to escape, and may even implicate his master, which is not what he wants to see. So even if there is a mission reminder, Su Tong is not going to take the risk. He likes to explore, but it doesn't mean that he likes to be impulsive like Chang Wugu. "It's getting late, I'll leave now. I'll see you next time. After Su Tong said that, he turned around and left. Etc. Seeing that Su Tong was about to leave, Zhu Rong calmed down. He looked at Su Tong, and Su Tong's reflection appeared in his eyes. For a moment, Su Tong felt that his whole body was shaking, as if time around him had slowed down. One shot. This feeling disappeared in the blink of an eye. When Su Tong recovered, a sinister smile gradually appeared on that huge face. I saw it. Su Tong frowned, ignored him and continued walking forward. He had satisfied his curiosity and just didn't intend to listen to this old bastard's nonsense anymore. But Zhu Rong's voice behind him kept getting into Su Tong's ears, as if it had grown legs. Ha 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 ha, I saw your death date. Just recently, blood was sprinkled all over the red leaves. Your body will fall under a bloody tree. You have no way to survive. The low roar was still echoing in Su Tong's ears until he walked out of the dungeon. But Su Tong didn't believe this at all. Compared with the hospital's magician, this guy's routine is really out of date. Ding. Side Mission 1, visiting the Forbidden Palace has been completed. When Su Tong walked out of the dungeon, a prompt sounded. It seemed that this dungeon was one of the 13 buildings in the Forbidden Palace. He raised his head and took a look at his luck. Although it was not good, it was not bad either. However, just in case, Su Tong couldn't help but make a fortune. Take a look at the hexagram Jiangua, Water Mountain Jian. This is the first time Su Tong has figured out this hexagram, but overall it is not bad, but it is not good for traveling eastward, but the direction of the top of Yushan Mountain is exactly in the southwest, so it seems that he may not have no chance of climbing to the top of Yushan Mountain this time. Immediately, Su Tong regained his composure, quietly opened the door a crack, looked left and right, and after confirming that there were no guards around, he tiptoed up to the top of the secluded mountain in front of him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 779. After passing through the dog hole in the palace wall, a small hill appeared in front of him. Su Tong looked around with his life icon. After repeatedly confirming that there were no guards around, Su Tong became suspicious in his heart. Aren't there any guards? After all, the front door is the Emperor's palace, but there is not a single guard here. Not only are there no guards, but there is not even a ban on Su Tong. He is indeed the great emperor, but this is a bit too conceited. Thinking of this, Su Tong thought about it and thought his idea was funny. How could a thief care about his master? Since the emperor is so relieved, why should he be polite? When he jumped up and walked up the bluestone steps in front of him, Su Tong suddenly shuddered after walking only a few steps. He felt a cool breeze blowing in front of him, and even his physical body felt completely cold. He couldn't help but shrink his neck and pull the collar tighter. Chang Wuju, are you still alive? Under the cliff on the other side, Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai climbed down little by little, holding onto the vines. Before he landed, Gao Zhou looked around and felt that this place smelled like a garbage dump. It almost made him spit it out. As soon as one foot landed on the ground, I immediately felt that the sole of my foot was soft. The dark soil on the ground seemed to be the mud after the water had just receded, and there was no force at all when I stepped on it. This can't be a latrine, right? Gu Zibai resisted the tumbling of his stomach and thought to himself, no wonder that little fat boy refuses to come down no matter what. Often unrestrained. Gao Zhou endured the stench and shouted again, but still no one responded. Just when Gao Zhou thought that this kid had left here, he suddenly looked straight and saw a big hole on the ground not far away. Immediately, Gao Zhou ignored the stench and walked to the pit to take a look. Sure enough, the boy was really under the pit, but he was already dizzy. So he quickly called Gu Zibai, and the two of them worked together to pull Chang Wulu up from under the pothole. Can't this unlucky kid just listen to the fat monk's instructions before dancing? Gao Zhou sighed with a wise tone, but he completely forgot that just now they also thought that the fat monk wanted them to jump. He took out a handful of scarlet grass blades from the props book, put a handful of them in his hand, and placed them under the bridge of Chang Wuhan's nose. Not long after, Chang Wuju sneezed and woke up. As a result, when he opened his mouth, he lay on the side and vomited loudly. Vomit. Chang Wuhan's face was ashen and he was almost out of breath. It turned out that the reason why he dared to jump from such a high place was not that he was really brainless and reckless. On the contrary, this kind of operation was completely useless to him. It's innocuous. You only need to use Shunpo technique to move yourself in mid-air before landing, slow down your fall, and you can land easily. But what Chang Wuju never expected was that there was such a stench down the valley. He was knocked unconscious on the spot, and then fell upside down. Fortunately, he had slowed down a lot at that time, and the bottom was very soft, otherwise he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai understood this. When they climbed down the tree vines, they almost fainted from the stench below. Fortunately, before coming down, the fat monk gave them 3 things. A bag of tips, which the fat monk asked to open at the critical moment. A black cloth package with something like sand inside. It was soft when pinched. I didn't know what it was. I threw it into the prop book. The prop book didn't show the entry. And a handful of scarlet herbs. Just mash the herb and apply it under the bridge of your nose, and you won't be overtaken by the stink. What's next? Chang Wuju covered his head, feeling dizzy. Looking around, he saw a huge valley in front of him, and further ahead was a huge stone cave. Go inside. Gao Zhou pointed to the cave in front of him. When he came down, the fat monk only said that there was an opportunity for the 3 of them down here. But the specific opportunity is indeed unknown. At the moment, we can only take one step at a time. So the 3 of them walked through the mud into the cave. The cave was huge, but it didn't look like it was formed naturally. Because the mountain wall is too smooth, it looks more like man-made. Why do I think we were tricked by that bald man? What's written in that bag? Open it and take a look. The further Chang Wuhan walked, the more suspicious he became. After what happened just now, he began to doubt the fat monk in his heart. No, the fat monk said that we can only open the bag of tips when we have absolutely no choice. Gao Zhou shook his head firmly. He believed in the monk. If they try to trick us and move their fingers on it, all 3 of us will die. Why bother? That's right. The other party has no intention of harming us. Moreover, he has taken great care of us along the way. Besides, he also made it very clear that he accepted the money from the boss, so he gave us a chance. Gu Zibai analyzed as he walked. It was not that he was gullible, but that the opponent's strength was there. If he had bad intentions, as Gao Zhou said, none of the 3 of them would survive. Ha ha. Naive, just a few money. Chang Wuhan curled his lips and thought, how much money can I buy for an opportunity? Isn't the money in my hand enough to make this monk kneel down and call me grandpa? Humph, you know nothing. Do you understand that money is hard currency? Gao Zhou was also a little annoyed, and suddenly became a little rude when he spoke. Chang Wuju nodded when he heard the words, and was about to show the money in his hand to open the guy's eyes, when suddenly there was a click under his feet. When he looked down, he saw that there was a bone beneath his feet. Immediately he looked ahead and saw that the ground was covered with bones, which made Chang become on guard. Why so many bones? Gu Zibai looked at the bones in front of him and felt a little scared. Generally speaking, this was not a good sign. This is. At this moment, Gao Zhou suddenly focused his eyes, hesitated for a moment, took a few steps forward, and took a closer look. Hiss. Instantly, a chill hit him, causing Gao Zhou to freeze. Gu Zibai and Chang Liuja saw that he was motionless, and when they were about to step forward, they heard Gao Zhou screaming in the team channel, "Don't move." The two saw Gao Zhou slowly turning around, his forehead already covered with dense beads of sweat. After making a silent gesture towards the two of them, he raised his hand and pointed forward. When the two saw this, they walked up to Gao Zhou, raised their heads and looked forward, only to see a huge ivory stuck in the soil in the darkness in front of them. This tusk is extremely large, even those mammoth tusks in reality cannot compare with it. One can imagine how huge the owner of this ivory once was, but at this moment, this ivory was thrown here, with the end covered with broken bones and stained with strands of blood. When the three of them saw this, they couldn't help but think of the demonic elephant that was taken into its mouth by the giant dog. The demon elephant's corpse is here, so it's self-evident what kind of place this is. Thinking of this, Gao Zhou and the others felt their scalps go numb, and they cursed the fat monk in their hearts for throwing them into the doghouse. Retreat. For a moment, the three of them held their breath involuntarily, bowed down, like three big ducks with their butts raised, and stepped back step by step, for fear of waking up the monster lurking in the doghouse. Woof. Sudden. A barking sound frightened the three of them. They turned around quickly and took a closer look. They saw a small black native dog behind them. They didn't know when they appeared behind them. The three of them breathed a sigh of relief after seeing it was just a little local dog. Woof woof woof. The native dog swung its tail and barked at the three of them. Seeing the little native dog barking more and more happily, Chang Liuvan stepped forward and grabbed the native dog's mouth. With a bone blade in his other hand, he wanted to kill the native dog, fearing that this little thing barked down and lure the old dog out. Don't. Soon enough, Gu Zibai grabbed Chang Liu's wrist and said, "Are you crazy? Killing dogs in the kennel? What if this is the old dog's child? Do you think you can get out alive?" Hearing this, Chang Wuhan was also startled. Looking at the little native dog that was twisting and struggling with its muzzle and muzzle clenched by him, he frowned for a moment. "Then what do you think we should do?" "Let me." Gao Zhou stepped forward, grabbed the native dog's head, took out a roll of tape with one hand and shook it in his hand. He turned his head and said proudly to Chang Wogu and Gu Zibai, "This is not easy. Wouldn't it be better if we tied its mouth?" After saying that, he planned to take action. He quickly tore off the tape and wrapped a circle of tape around the dog's mouth. It looked like it was firmly wrapped. Only then was he satisfied and held the dog in front of him. Whoa! Looking at the puppy, which kept clawing at its mouth and twisting its head and struggling, Gao Zhou grinned, stretched out a finger and shook it in front of the puppy a few times, and then flicked it to the ground with a snap of his fingers. After letting out a proud laugh, he clapped his hands and turned around and said proudly, "How about it? My hands-on ability is pretty good." Gu Zibai rolled his eyes and said to himself, "You know how to bully a puppy like this." Just when he was about to say something, his pupils suddenly tightened and his body froze in place for a moment. "What? Is there any problem?" Seeing that the two of them didn't reply, Gao Zhou couldn't help but take a step forward. Unexpectedly, when he took a step forward, Gu Zibai and Chang Wogu took a step back. Seeing the fear in their eyes, Gao Zhou's heart skipped a beat, and a bad premonition came over him. Click. 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 There seemed to be the sound of something breaking behind him, which made the corners of Gao Zhou's mouth twitch a few times, and the hairs all over his body stood up unconsciously. In fear, he didn't dare to look back at all. The sweat on his forehead rolled down the corners of his eyes and he said instantly, "Run." After saying run, Gao Zhou kicked his legs and jumped up. Under the urging of fear, his clothes were torn apart by a pair of flesh wings, and he was completely transformed into a corpse, turning into a flying yaksha. You, uncle. Gu Zibai and Chang Liuja ran away when they saw Gao Zhou without any warning. When they came to their senses, they saw a pair of huge wild pupils in front of them, like fireballs, sweeping towards them. With these huge eyeballs, the two of them could even clearly see the tape stuck to the dog's nose. Woof! A roar of a dog shook the ground and the mountains shook. The black dog in front of them pounced suddenly, its huge body pressing down with overwhelming power. For a moment, Gu Zibai and Chang Luogu were unable to move. Chang Wuhan even found that his space teleportation ability could not be used at this moment. It's over. Seeing the huge figure rushing towards them, the two of them felt a chill in their hearts and despair showed in their eyes. They never thought that one day they would die in the mouth of a local dog, even if it was a dog raised by the emperor. Boom! The raging wind blew up the surrounding gravel and bones. But the expected pain did not come, and only when the two opened their eyelids did they realize that they were still alive. The black dog ignored them both and chased Gao Zhou straight away. Are we, okay? Gu Zibai's lips trembled, feeling that her breathing had stopped at that moment. Until now, I still can't believe the fact that I am still alive. On the side, Chang Liuja touched himself and made sure that he had no arms or legs. Then he breathed a heavy sigh of relief and said as if he was awake from a dream. Is it because we are covered in feces and this dog is too lazy to eat us? Not necessarily. Gu Zibai looked at the direction the black dog was chasing and shook his head. Maybe this is a personal vendetta. Who made Gao Zhou not only silence him, but also give him a slap in the head? But after all, the two of them couldn't watch Gao Zhou die. We can only bite the bullet and catch up, looking for opportunities to rescue this fool. Compared with Gao Zhou's troubles, Su Tong was equally uncomfortable on the other side. Huh! A breath of white breath came out of Su Tong's mouth, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a thin layer of frost and dissipated in the cold wind. He raised his head and looked at the bluestone path in front of him, his eyelashes already covered with a thick layer of frost. Only now did Su Tong understand why such an important place had neither guards nor restrictions. Because there is no need for it. The road got colder and colder as we walked up the stairs. With every step we climbed, the surrounding air seemed to drop by more than 10 degrees. Although Su Tong had already wrapped himself in thick clothes, the cool wind pricked him like a pervasive cold needle. Every step he took, the soles of his feet felt as if they were half pierced by sharp spears, causing every muscle in Su Tong's body to tremble. He looked up at the steps in front of him. He was clearly close at hand, but yet he seemed so far away. At this moment, Su Tong realized the feeling of being cold at a high place, but the more painful it was, the more it aroused the bloody nature deep in his heart. Not related to the task. At this moment, he wanted to go to the top of the mountain to take a look and see how different the scenery that Emperor Yushin could see was. Looking at the rugged bluestone path in front of him, Su Tong took out something from the props book, a ginseng as thick as a radish. I don't know how long it took for this ginseng to become so thick. Su Tong usually only cut off a small part of the roots when making elixirs, which was enough for use. But at this moment, Su Tong actually put this ginseng to his mouth like a radish and started chewing it. Suddenly a pungent bitter taste hit him. Su Tong didn't care so much and just stuffed it into his mouth. By the time he ate a whole ginseng, Su Tong's face had turned red and the whites of his eyes were bloodshot. Ginseng is a life-saving medicine, but it is also a killer. In the Emperor's Forbidden Palace, although Su Tong's physical strength was suppressed, his physique was still astonishing, far beyond the ordinary, even with a ginseng in his abdomen. Within a moment, waves of cramping pain came from the abdomen, and it felt as if the internal organs were on fire. A burst of hot white air was spit out from the mouth, even stained with a few drops of blood. The foot on the bluestone was slowly raised, making a tearing sound, and the soles of the shoes were actually frozen to the bluestone. When Su Tong saw this, he just frowned and continued walking barefoot, 1 step, 2 steps. The figures on the mountain road gradually began to blur, but there were clear blood marks left on this bluestone path. Ah! Gao Zhou's screams echoed in the empty cave. When he looked back, he saw the huge shadow behind him getting closer and closer. For a moment, Gao Zhou almost cried. The last time I was chased by a dog was when I was 7 years old. I didn't expect that after so many years, I could relieve this childhood fear. Fortunately, after Gao Zhou transformed into Feishan Yaksha, his speed was astonishingly fast. From time to time, he would summon 2 zombies and throw them behind him, trying to delay the black dog. As a result, the dog seemed to have spotted Gao Zhou and ignored the incoming zombies. Moreover, this kind of little zombie will be directly bounced away by the aura of the black dog before it can get close, and it will have no effect at all. Why are you only chasing me? Seeing the black dog getting closer and closer, he felt a huge pressure that almost took his breath away. Divine power. Although it is impossible for this kind of pressure to appear on a dog, it is not surprising at all that it appears on this dog. After all, this is a dog raised by the emperor. Gao Zhou found that his breathing became more and more rapid. He was shrouded in divine power and his speed suddenly dropped. Woof! Seeing this, the black dog raised its paw and took a photo of Gao Zhou. A huge shadow temporarily enveloped Gao Zhou's head, making Gao Zhou's blood run cold. He immediately gritted his teeth, folded his wings, and suddenly fell to the ground. Overlord Body Active Skill 1, Overlord's Wrath. A layer of faint golden light covered Gao Zhou's body, and at the same time, his legs landed on the ground and he squatted down heavily. It consumes 300 script points. After activation, the size increases by 20%, the strength increases by 30%, and the agility decreases by 20%. During the duration of Overlord's Wrath, you are immune to all physical controls, immune to mental controls below level 6, and your jumping ability is increased by 50%. After receiving the blessing of the Overlord body, the oppressive feeling brought by the divine power was suddenly reduced a lot immediately. He pushed hard, and the rocks under his feet burst into cracks like spider webs. The whole person flew out quickly like a cannonball, narrowly avoiding the dog's claws. Boom! Suddenly, the landslide and ground cracked in front of me, and with just a tap of the dog's paw, the ground collapsed completely, sending up a 10-meter-high sandstorm. Fortunately, Gao Zhou dodged it. If he hadn't dodged it, he would have been able to bear this claw. Seeing how terrifying this dog was, Gao Zhou could only speed up his escape by bouncing. Woof! The black dog pounced in vain, but chased him more happily, as if he had discovered a new toy, just chasing Gao Zhou to play with. For this dog, maybe this is a toy delivered to the door, but for Gao Zhou, every time he avoids it, it is full of dangers. If he is not careful, he will be slapped by this dog in the next moment. Bolognese. You idiot, you deserve to tease this dog. At this time, Chang Wenzhen's scolding came from the team channel. Gao Zhou heard the curses coming from his mouth, but he had no choice but to say, if I knew it was this dog, I should let you stab it with a knife and let you try what it feels like to be chased by a dog. You two, stop arguing and think of a way. Gu Zibai interrupted the quarrel between the two of them, but Chang Liuzhu had a grimace. What way do you think of it? Do you think the three of us can beat this dog? Gu Zibai was speechless for a moment. This dog really proved with actions that not only did they live worse than a dog, but they were even worse than this dog in strength. The gap is too big. If we really attack with all our strength, not only will we not be able to save Gao Zhou, we will actually annoy him, and then all three of them will die here. The brochure. Yes, look at what it says in the brochure. At this time, Gu Zibai suddenly remembered that among the 3 things the fat monk gave Gao Zhou, there was a tips bag. He couldn't open it now, or when. Gao Zhou's eyes lit up and he didn't care. He just took out the kit, opened it and took a look. I saw a small note inside. Unfold the note and there is a sentence written on it, hit the dog's nose with grass ash. Grass ash. Gao Zhou was startled, and suddenly remembered the black cloth package that the fat monk had given him. He immediately took it out and was about to turn around to smash it, but when he turned around, he realized that the dog's two red flame eyeballs were flashing like something is coming out. Immediately his face suddenly changed, and he felt a chill in his heart. He immediately didn't care about hitting the dog's nose with grass ash. He bit the tip of his tongue and formed a seal with his hands. The figure turned into a stream of light and flashed forward a few hundred meters away. It's too late, it's fast. At the moment when Gao Zhou flew forward, two strange lights flashed out from the dog's eyes. The next moment, the area where Gao Zhou was located turned into a piece of gravel. Seeing this scene, Gao Zhou's heart froze. I can't imagine that if this hit me, I'm afraid I will be out of my mind today. What's written in the brochure? At this time, Gu Zibai asked in the team channel. I smashed the dog's nose with grass ash, but I didn't dare approach the dog at all. Gao Zhou screamed. Not to mention smashing the dog's nose, he was afraid that if he got closer at this moment, the dog would tear him into pieces. Hearing Gao Zhou's words, Gu Zibai frowned slightly. Throw the ash into the team warehouse. Then what? Gao Zhou asked. Hold it and leave the rest to us. Boom. There was an earthquake in the mountains and rivers, and rubble hit Gao Zhou, almost knocking him out. But before he could catch his breath, the black dog was already rushing over excitedly, wagging its tail. I'll be good. Gao Zhou's face twitched a few times and he jumped up to dodge. Seeing that the space to dodge was getting smaller and smaller, Gao Zhou was about to despair. At this moment, two figures were seen running straight from the side. It's all on you. Along with Gu Zibai's long roar, the muscles of his originally thin body suddenly exploded. With the blessing of martial arts, the muscles on his arms actually made a thunderous buzzing sound. After spinning in place, he suddenly opened his arms and moved forward. One shot. Whoosh. I don't know what it was that made a sharp cracking sound. The black dog seemed to have noticed something approaching, but when he looked up, he didn't find anything. In a daze, Chang Wenzhen's figure suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Chang Wuji's body was covered with a robe like a green shirt, which was the treasure Qingluan immortal clothes obtained in the heaven. The divine power of this dog prevents him from using space teleportation, but the invisibility ability of Qingluan immortal clothes is not affected. Smelly dog, get back. Chang Wuji's eyes flashed, and he raised his hand to hit the package heavily on the dog's nose. Boom. Immediately, the package exploded, and grass ash with a faint golden light sprinkled on the black dog's nose, causing the black dog to let out a piercing scream. I don't know what the fat monk used to make this grass ash. After the black dog let out a wail, he turned around and ran away with his tail between his legs, ignoring Gao Zhou and the others. On the cliff outside the dog cave, I saw the fat monk leaning half against the mountain wall, looking leisurely and contented. At this time, his broad ears twitched. Coming. The fat monk said he was coming, stood up and untied the rope from his waist, knotted it casually and waved it away. The rope soared in the air, shining with golden light. Just waiting for the black dog to rush out of the hole, it was set on the black dog and rushed out with the black dog. Looking at this black dog, it ran straight towards the direction of the great emperor's palace. The fat monk nodded with a smile, clasped his hands together, and said, Amitabha, venerable sir, the only way this poor monk can help you is this last journey. The karma I owe you has been paid off. As for whether you can survive the next disaster, it depends on yourself. So good, so good. After the fat monk said this, the Buddha's light suddenly shone on his body. It turned into a golden lotus of merit and slowly flew up until it disappeared into the air. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Above the Ocean Palace, a blue stone path leads directly to the top of the mountain. However, this path is not accessible to ordinary people. Every step is like a cold knife coming to pick out the flesh and scrape the bones. It is said that it is extremely cold at high places. How can it be possible for ordinary people to reach the top of this secluded mountain, overlooking the pinnacle of the netherworld? In the vast white snow, Su Tong's eyelids were constantly trembling, and his strong willpower supported him to continue going up. However, his feet had been standing there for a long time without moving at all. It's like a person who is extremely sleepy and still working. He has already coded thousands of words in his mind, but in fact he has fallen asleep on the keyboard. It wasn't until his mind suddenly shook that he realized that he had been standing there for a long time. Seeing that his feet were rotten by the cold, Su Tong tried to bite the tip of his tongue and relied on the stinging pain to lift his legs. However, he only slightly raised one foot and placed it on the stone steps in front of him, but he stopped. No strength to push up. Is it the limit? Su Tong's eyes showed unwillingness. If his physical strength was not suppressed by the Forbidden Palace, maybe he would still have a chance. Thinking of this, Su Tong felt helpless for a moment. It seems that after becoming a player, he has not experienced this feeling of powerlessness for a long, long time. Call. A cold wind came, blowing his body, as if there were palms trying to push him down from here. No matter Su Tong tried to struggle, his weak body could no longer hold on. He could only watch helplessly as he swayed from side to side in the strong wind until his body rose up and fell towards him. Woof. I don't know if it was an illusion, but I heard a barking sound in my ears. Just when Su Tong was closing his eyes and waiting for death, a black shadow suddenly jumped past him. The speed was so fast that Su Tong could not see clearly what it was, but immediately after, he felt a tightness in his waist. It was as if something was wrapped around his waist. It was like a life-saving straw. Su Tong didn't care what the life-saving straw was, and immediately grabbed it with his hand subconsciously. Hoo-hoo! Suddenly a huge force of inertia hit him from the rope in his hand, which dazzled him as he was lifted up into the air and dragged directly to the top of the mountain. It's long enough. 2 chapters is more, almost 3 chapters worth. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 780. Oh. It hurt, the kind of pain that felt like his whole body was falling apart. Waves of warmth hit his face, causing his numb head to gradually regain consciousness. When he opened his eyes, he saw a black dog coiled next to him. The black dog stuck out its tongue and licked Su Tong's face from time to time. Dog. In a daze, he remembered that he was dragged up the mountain by a black shadow. He raised his palm and saw the golden rope, which connected him to the black dog. There is also a line of small words on the rope. The swordsmen at the foot of the mountain conquer the dangerous peaks, and the fragrance eliminates the calamity of withered cypresses and peach blossoms. The devil's heart is exchanged for the Bodhi fruit, and the exquisite body opens up and takes root. As soon as Su Tong finished reading the small words above, he saw the rope suddenly turned into little golden lights and gradually dissipated. What does it mean? Su Tong looked at the dissipated rope and couldn't help but feel strange. He didn't know where the black dog came from, and he didn't know who left the rope to save him. Without a clue, the other party only left such a poem. What was he trying to remind himself of? Su Tong covered his forehead, feeling a splitting headache. He raised his head and looked around, and suddenly saw that in front of him was a vast sea of clouds, a simple room, and a tall and green old pine. I'm coming up. Seeing this, Su Tong quickly called out the prop book and took a look. Sure enough, there was a reminder in the prop book that he had completed side task 2. Su Tong didn't expect that he could really climb up, and he forced himself to stand upright tremblingly. What surprised him was that after arriving here, although the prop card was still banned, the power of the physical body was no longer suppressed in any way. Looking left and right, he saw a stone protruding from the edge of the cliff in front of him, with a futon placed on the stone. Seeing this, Su Tong took a deep breath, walked step by step to the futon, and then tried to sit down, looking at the vast underworld in front of him. Awakening the supernatural power of the third eye, his eyes were as bright as lightning. Looking up, the world seemed to be right in front of him. He could see a piece of dark yellow sea water in the distance, and the black moon looked like half of it was soaked in the sea water. You can vaguely see the occasional sparks flashing under the mountain. Behind a few mountains, there is a huge and magnificent city, which is the city of Fuzi. Further to the southwest, there is a sea of blood. In addition, Su Tong discovered that there was not only one city like Weishi City in the underworld, but also many large and small towns. Far to the north of Weishi City, there was a huge city called Fengdu. And the so-called Laotian Palace in Fengdu should be in that place. Sure enough, the scenery is infinitely good. I have to say, this feeling of looking down at all living beings in the underworld is really great. But Su Tong did not get carried away. Being able to sit on the emperor's futon and look at the scenery in front of the Lord of Yushan, Su Tong was already enlightened and satisfied. Taking advantage of the moment when his physical strength was restored, he quickly seized the time, took out the wound-resolving pill from the prop book, swallowed it, and quickly healed the wounds on his body. He was seriously injured, and in some places a normal person would have to have his limbs amputated. But after recovering the Along body, these injuries were irrelevant. After only about half an hour passed, Su Tong's wounds had already fully recovered. Standing up, Su Tong did not forget to take out his mobile phone and take a selfie to check in. Otherwise, how could he be worthy of his hard work and the risk of almost losing his life? Then he glanced at the palace in front of him. The so-called palace is a place where you live and sleep. These rooms are very small. If you visit the Forbidden City in Beijing, you will find that even the Empress Dowager Cixi only has a small room to sleep. The Emperor's palace is no exception. Su Tong walked to the door, hesitated, and tried to push the door. As a result, he pushed it gently and the door opened. Seeing the door that opened lightly in front of him, Su Tong couldn't help but think to himself, well, he is worthy of being the emperor of the house. The door is not locked. Are you really so confident? Is there anyone? No one. I'm coming in. Su Tong tried shouting twice, then stepped into the door with one foot, looked around and found that the room was in a mess. A large number of bamboo tubes were thrown on the ground, and two small mountains were piled up on the table beside them with all kinds of messy books. Seeing this, Su Tong nodded, with a confirming look in his eyes, thinking, the emperor is definitely a single guy. After taking out his mobile phone to take various selfies and check in as souvenirs, Su Tong picked up a book and took a look at the title Lianxiang Companion. After flipping through a few pages, Su Tong twitched the corner of his mouth, coughed twice, and could only put the book in its place. Pick up another book, The Shadow of Flowers Behind the Curtain, sequel. After casually flipping through 2 pages, Su Tong Gren was stunned. The butterfly powder has just begun to bloom, and the bee yellow has not faded. When I first entered the peach garden, I still recognized the path when the stream turned around the peak. When I explored the flower stream deeply, I saw the movement of the bright stones gradually opening up. Good guy, really good guy. After casually flipping through 2 pages, Su Tong realized that collecting is indeed a characteristic of otakus all over the world, and even this powerful emperor is not immune to it. However, I don't know who the author of this book is. He is a vivid and moving person who describes the scenery of Wushan so movingly in just a few strokes. When I opened the title page and took a look, I saw a line of small words written on it. Author, Ding. Editor-in-Chief, Zhao Wenhe. Su Tong didn't know who Ding was, but Zhao Wen he had heard of him. He was one of the 5 ghost emperors who ruled Jizhong Mountain with Genren Wang. Unexpectedly, this Zhao Gui emperor would actually write this part-time, which is really eye-opening. Su Tong originally wanted to pick up a few books. After all, the writing was so wonderful. But then I thought about it, forget it, all otakus treat their collections as treasures. If he stole something else, he might not be aware of it for a while, but if he took this book, he might not be able to get out of the underworld alive. After taking a few photos as a souvenir, Su Tong exited the room. He turned around and glanced around, then suddenly focused on the big pine tree. This pine tree stands on the top of the mountain, so it is naturally extraordinary. I saw that the bark of the ancient tree was cracked and spread out like dragon scales. The trunk was only half a meter thick. It looked like a dragon lying in the coils, winding and extending beyond the cliff. The tree was full of crystal clear trees, with golden pine cones on them. Each pine cone is as bright as a star, and it is fascinating to see. The fat monk once said that if you want to know the answer to the script world, you have to pick one of the pine cones. Seeing this, Su Tong walked under the tree and looked back, only to see that the big black dog ignored him and just huddled up, making a low buzzing sound. There are 28 in total. No one will notice if you pick one. Su Tong glanced at the number of pine nuts on the old pine, and slowly stretched out his palm. Just as he was about to take off the next one, he suddenly heard a cough from behind him. Ahem! Su Tong was startled, suddenly turned around, and found that an old man had appeared behind him without anyone noticing. Su Tong had seen this old man before. When he opened the palace door and called the gods into the palace, it was this old man standing in front of the door. Su Tong looked a little embarrassed for a moment and could only retract his hand angrily. I'm lost. After all, being caught as a thief is not a glorious thing. The old man ignored Su Tong's words and just walked to Su Tong and looked at the ancient pine in front of him. When the emperor entered the netherworld and pacified this chaotic land, he planted this pine tree here. It is unknown how many years have passed since then. The old man sighed, which made Su Tong a little confused, but he couldn't figure out what the old man was going to say. Then I heard the old man continue, after so many years, only 28 pine nuts have been produced. It is a pity that you have to pick one as soon as you come. As he said that, he saw the old man reaching out to pick one of them off, and handed it to Su Tong. The emperor has asked me, if you come here, I will give this to you. The emperor knows I'm coming. Su Tong was shocked. He thought that what he did was quite hidden, but he didn't expect that others already knew about it. But the old man had no intention of explaining to Su Tong, and even turned a deaf ear to Su Tong's words. He said expressionlessly, this thing is given to you because of your destiny, and it is also the cause and effect you owe. You take it. If you don't take it, you have to think clearly. Su Tong looked at the pine cone in the old man's hand and frowned for a moment. The meaning of this sentence is worthy of his careful consideration. It seems that if he gets this thing, he owes him a favor. If the other person is someone else, even a ghost emperor like Du Ziren, Su Tong will have no scruples. But this is a favor from the emperor. Is this favor easy to get? If I took this pine cone today, I might have to pay a higher price to repay it tomorrow. Are you still scared? The old man seemed to see the hesitation in Su Tong's eyes, and a smile finally appeared on his face that showed no emotion or anger. But the next second, Su Tong took the pine cone in his hand. I'm afraid, I won't come. With that said, he threw the pine cone into the prop book, walking down the mountain without looking back. This made the old man stunned for a while, and then he shook his head. As I get older, I really don't have that aggressive spirit anymore. After saying that, he turned around, walked to the big black dog, stroked the black dog's head a few times, and after comforting him, he stood up and disappeared into the snow. At the same time, Gao Zhou and others also gained quite a lot. I saw 3 people passing through the dog hole, and sure enough they saw a paradise. The bald man is right, this back mountain is really a fairy cave. Gao Zhou raised his head, looked at the orchard in front of him, and took a deep breath involuntarily, feeling that the air here was fresh. Gu Zibai didn't have much time to sigh and kept picking plump fruits one after another. These fruits have no names at all. Even if it is thrown into the prop book, the prop book will only use what kind of magic fruit, strange fruit anyway, you can't eat it to death, to deal with them. Although it has no name, the effect of the fruit is truly amazing. After eating, some can increase one's own strength by 5%. Some can increase lifespan by more than 10 days. What's even more exaggerated is that Gao Zhou found a pink fruit on an unknown tree. After eating it, his 5th leg grew 3 centimeters. No, Chang Wuhen has already started frantically looking for that pink fruit everywhere. However, there were so many fruits here that it was dazzling to see. The 3 of them picked them as they walked and didn't know how many they picked. They just threw them into the prop book. When the prop book is full, it is thrown into the team warehouse. I really couldn't hold it in, so I simply walked a few steps and ate one. After eating all the way, the 3 people's physical fitness was greatly improved. Didn't you say that there is a yin-yang spring? Gu Zibai looked at the fruit forest, but he was thinking in his heart that when he went up the mountain before, the fat monk once said that there was a yin and yang spring. The yin and yang spring can change a person's bones, give him the body of a Vajra, and make him a supreme genius in martial arts. This was the treasure that Gu Zibai had dreamed of finding. There should be, that fat man seems quite reliable. Gao Zhou said. Chang Wuhen nodded in agreement with a rare nod, his eyes darting around, and when he saw any strange flowers, he rushed up to pick them. He is looking for the ancient spirit baby flower mentioned by the fat monk. According to the fat monk, this flower can not only bring the dead back to life, but also has the power to reshape the physical body. However, the 3 of them had been here for so long, but they found nothing except these strange fruits. Just when the 3 of them were wondering whether the fat monk had tricked them, suddenly Gu Zibai grabbed the 2 of them by their arms and pulled them back until they were in the grass's side, then pointed to an inconspicuous corner on the left. The 2 of them followed Gu Zibai's fingers and took a look. Not far away, there were 2 guards standing. Behind the guards was a huge round well. Clear spring water is constantly flowing from it. What's even more amazing is that this spiritual spring overflows from the mouth of a well, but it is yin and yang. The left side is bitterly cold, but the right side is warm and comfortable. Yin-yang spiritual spring. Seeing this, Gu Zibai's eyes widened. Isn't this exactly what you are looking for? But he soon ran into trouble. Why? In front of the well, there were 2 guards standing. These 2 guards were completely different from the guards in the Forbidden Palace. He was wearing shining battle armor, but he was holding 2 mourning sticks, one black and one white. Although they didn't know the origin, the 2 closed their eyes and fell into meditation, but their aura formed an invisible barrier around them. You can tell by looking at him that he must be a guard at the level of a ghost general. I don't know who is stronger than the gatekeeper ghost general they saw in Wushao City, but the 3 of them are probably no match. Would you like to divert the tiger away from the mountain? Gao Zhou thought for a moment and then spoke. Gu Zibai shook his head, it's not easy to deal with it. On the one hand, we may not be able to run away. On the other hand, if someone calls someone, we can't even think about staying here. Hey, I don't know what's going on. It seems that there is no news after entering the Forbidden Palace. Otherwise, if we ask him to give us a few ghost notes, everything will be easy to handle. Ming Chao. Chang Wogu squatted aside and raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Are you sure, will they accept it? Gao Zhou didn't want to continue arguing with Chang Wogu on this issue, so he just said impatiently, of course, Money can make all the difference. Have you forgotten how Long Dao and your Qingluan immortal clothes came from? That's it? Chang Wuhan thought of the arrogance with which Su Tong slapped Elder King K on the face last time he was in heaven, and he immediately became energetic. Standing up, in that case, it's up to me. After saying that, he ignored the surprised looks in their eyes and walked straight out of the grass. Hey, you're crazy. Gao Zhou's expression changed, and he stretched out his hand to catch him back, but Chang Wuhan easily dodged him. He glanced at Gao Zhou with contempt. Don't think that he is the only one who has money, and I have it too. You also have. Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai were shocked. They didn't expect Chang Wogu to have something like Ming Chao in his hands. But after thinking about it, the two of them felt relieved. After all, the relationship between this guy and the boss is extraordinary. They seem to be good brothers who grew up wearing a pair of pants. It is not a strange thing to have the money given to him by the boss in his hand. Thinking of this, Gao Zhou couldn't help but mutter to himself, I want both of them not to be given to me, humph. As he said that, he wanted to follow Chang Wuxiu out. After all, with Ming Chao, the rest of the matter can be easily discussed. Wait, why don't we wait and see first? I always feel that this guy is not reliable. Gu Zibai's intuition was comparable to that of a wild beast, and he was very sensitive to danger and uncertainty. He vaguely felt that this did not seem like a good idea. So I took Gao Zhou's arm, wanting him to wait a little longer. However, Gao Zhou patted Gu Zibai's hand. Don't worry, this guy is unreliable. How can the boss be unreliable? Can. Gu Zibai still felt something was wrong. In this case, you wait here and check my signal. If you make sure it's okay, I'll call you. Gao Zhou knew that Gu Zibai was a man who never let go of rabbits before he saw them, so he told him to wait here while he walked forward at Chang's unrestrained pace. Although the truth was correct, Gao Zhou was still a little unsure when Gu Zibai said this, so he stood next to Chang Wogu and confirmed again, Wuju, how many did the boss give you? Hearing this, Chang Wuju looked sideways at Gao Zhou with a smile full of contempt, which made Gao Zhou feel annoyed. But following Chang Wuju's words, Gao Zhou was a little shocked. Huh? Zhang? Who do you look down on? You don't need to give it to him. Remember, don't use Zhang, this unit, to measure my wealth. After saying that, Chang Wuju took out a large cardboard box from the props book and stuffed it into Gao Zhou's arms. The heavy weight made Gao Zhou dumbfounded. Is this all? Gao Zhou's breathing suddenly became rapid. Of course, do you think I'm joking with you? I have everything Su Tong has. I'm sure you'll be more comfortable hanging around with me than with him. Gao Zhou was already stunned by Chang Wogu's heavy box. I didn't know what to say for a moment. Come on, let me show you today what it means to be arrogant. Chang Wuzi raised his head and strode forward with steps as if he didn't recognize his relatives. In fact, the two guards beside the spiritual spring had already noticed them. But when they heard Chang Wuhan talking about being rich and arrogant, a glint flashed in the eyes of the two guards, and they looked at each other with a look that you know. Stop. It was only when the two of them got closer that they showed fierce looks on their faces and stood in front of them holding mourning sticks. This is the forbidden area of Yushan. How can you break into it without permission? If you don't retreat quickly, don't make things difficult for us and the other two. This was already said very politely. But Chang Wuju was particularly unhappy when he heard this. He curled his lips and walked up to the two ghost generals. Then I want to make things difficult for you today. Presumptuous. The two ghost generals suddenly stared at each other, and just when they were about to get angry, they saw Chang Lei tearing it apart without any hesitation, and casually grabbed the thick stack of Ming coins from inside. It looks like a small brick. The kind that makes a snapping sound when you clap it in your hand. Gao Zhou couldn't see clearly while holding the box. He could only see a thick stack of golden banknotes in Chang Wogu's hand. He thought they were ghost banknotes and felt secretly happy. I'm just asking you, is this money enough for me to be as arrogant as I want? When 2 stacks of money were slapped on the chests of the 2 ghost generals in front of them by Chang Wuju, the expectant gazes of the 2 ghost generals froze in an instant. Seeing the 2 of them not moving, Chang Wuhen thought they had been frightened by the thick money, and his face could not stop showing a look of madness. He took out a stack of ghost coins from the box and patted the dull face of the ghost general on the left. You've never seen such a big limit, have you? Not only am I going to be bold today, I'm also going to be wild. If you want my money, go pick it up yourself. After saying that, he raised the Ming coins in his hand, and suddenly the Ming coins scattered and flew above his head. Hey, you can't be such a spendthrift. Gao Zhou raised his head and looked at the golden coins in the sky, and was about to persuade Chang Wogu to be too high profile. As a result, a piece of money fell squarely on his face. When Gao Zhou took a closer look, the originally excited smile froze on his face for a moment. The 18 zeros on the golden mimeograph paper of this underworld coin are particularly conspicuous. Gao Zhou was stunned for a while, then put the box down, grabbed a stack of Ming coins in the box and took a closer look. Hiss. For a moment, Gao Zhou's expression was more complicated than the face-changing expression in Sichuan opera. His eyes were as wide as Niu Ling's, and he was glaring angrily at Chang Wuzi, who was still dancing and throwing coins, and the corners of his mouth could not stop twitching. He suddenly understood now why Su Tong always said that this guy was a dangerous person and asked them to keep their distance. I couldn't help but curse, Chang Wuhen, why the hell do you call this thing Ming Chao? Huh? Of course, when I bought it, the boss personally guaranteed that this is the best money. Chang Wuju turned around and looked at Gao Zhou doubtfully. But Gao Zhou rolled his eyes and said, "You are so humming stupid." After saying that, Gao Zhou turned around and ran away without looking back, swearing secretly in his heart that he would never believe this wronged person again in his life. Well, I'll start adding more updates tomorrow, so I won't post them together anymore. It's better to post them separately.